The devil you know won't save you, but maybe the one you don't will. Selene Vale's death was supposed to happen in that rain-soaked alley behind a Manhattan steakhouse. Hands around her throat, her ex-fiancé's breath hot against her face. A 9-year-old boy waiting tables inside, unaware his aunt was dying in the dark. Then headlights cut through the storm, and the most dangerous man in New York stepped out of a black Rolls-Royce. Cassian Moreau didn't save people. He owned them. But when he offered protection, Selene took it, because sometimes monsters are the only thing standing between you and hell. If you're watching from your city right now, drop a comment below and hit that like button. Let me see how far this story travels. Now buckle up, because this ride doesn't slow down. The rain tasted like rust and regret. Selene Vale's vision blurred as Riker's fingers dug deeper into her throat, cutting off air, cutting off sound, cutting off any fantasy she'd had that running 300 miles from Boston would be far enough. The brick wall behind her scraped through her soaked uniform, cold and unforgiving. And somewhere in the chaos of her oxygen-starved brain, she thought about Eli, 9 years old, inside the restaurant, waiting for her to finish her shift, waiting for her to come back. She wasn't going to come back. "You thought you could just leave?" Riker's voice was a hiss, spit flecking her face. His cologne, expensive, suffocating, mixed with the stench of garbage and stormwater flooding the alley. "You thought you could take him and disappear? Like I wouldn't find you?" Selene clawed at his wrists, nails digging into skin, but Riker had always been stronger. 6'2", gym sculpted, with the kind of control that made him dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with muscle. She'd learned that the hard way. Learned it when he'd put her sister in the hospital. Learned it when her sister died anyway, car crash on the interstate. And the police called it an accident, even though Selene knew it wasn't. "Stop," she choked out, but the word came out airless. "I loved you." Riker's face was inches from hers now, eyes wild, pupils blown. "I gave you everything, and you threw it away for what? For him? That broken little kid who doesn't even talk?" Rage flared hot in her chest, hotter than fear. She tried to spit at him but couldn't get enough breath. Her lungs screamed, her heartbeat hammered in her ears like gunfire, then light sliced through the darkness. Headlights. Bright. Blinding. Riker's grip loosened just enough for Selene to suck in half a breath before he yanked her closer, using her body as a shield. A car door opened. Footsteps. Calm. Measured. The kind of footsteps that didn't belong to someone who was scared. "Take your hands off her." The voice was low, controlled, and colder than the rain. Riker twisted his head, and Selene caught a glimpse through the water streaming down her face. A man stood in the alley entrance, backlit by the Rolls-Royce's high beams. Tall, dark coat, hands in his pockets like he'd just stepped out for a stroll instead of into a back alley assault. "Walk away," Riker snapped. "This doesn't concern you." The man took 3 steps forward, and the light shifted enough for Selene to see his face. Ice blue eyes, sharp cheekbones, a mouth that looked like it had forgotten how to smile years ago. She didn't recognize him, but something in her gut, some animal instinct buried under years of survival, whispered a warning. This man was dangerous, more dangerous than Riker, different kind of dangerous. "You're hurting her," the man said, his tone still maddeningly calm. "That concerns me." "Who the hell are you?" "Cassian Moreau." The name hung in the air like a knife. Riker went still, completely still. Selene felt the shift in his body, the way his muscles locked up, the way his breath caught. Even through her own panic, she understood what that meant. He was scared. "I didn't know," Riker said quickly, too quickly. "I didn't. This is personal, family business. You're making a mess in my city." Cassian's gaze flicked to Selene, lingered for half a second, then returned to Riker. "Let her go." "She's mine." "She's not." 2 words. Flat. Final. Riker's hands fell away from Selene's throat like he'd been burned. She collapsed against the wall, gasping, coughing, tasting blood in her mouth. Her knees buckled, but she forced herself upright, forced herself to stay standing because falling now felt like dying. Cassian didn't move. Didn't need to. Riker backed up 3 steps, hands raised, face pale. "We're done here," Cassian said. Riker turned and ran. Just ran. Down the alley, into the rain, gone. Selene stood there shaking, water streaming down her face, her throat on fire, her mind trying to catch up with what had just happened. Cassian Moreau. She'd heard the name. Everyone in New York had heard the name. Crime lord, syndicate boss, the kind of man who didn't show up in back alleys to save waitresses unless there was something in it for him. He walked toward her slowly, like she was a wounded animal that might bolt. "You're bleeding." He nodded toward her split lip. Selene touched her mouth, fingers coming away red. She couldn't speak yet, couldn't get her throat to work. Cassian reached into his coat and pulled out a handkerchief. Expensive fabric, monogrammed. He held it out but didn't come closer. "Take it." She did, pressed it against her lip. It came away stained. "You work here?" Cassian glanced at the restaurant's back door. Selene nodded. "He'll come back." It wasn't a question. She nodded again, hating how small the gesture felt. Cassian studied her for a long moment, those ice-blue eyes taking her apart and putting her back together in some calculation she couldn't read. Then he pulled something from his pocket. A business card. Black. Minimalist. Just a phone number embossed in silver. "Call me when he does." "I don't—" Selene's voice cracked. She swallowed, winced at the pain, tried again. "I don't need help." "Yes, you do." The certainty in his voice made her want to scream, or cry, or both. "People like you don't help for free," she said hoarsely. Something that might have been amusement flickered across Cassian's face. "No, we don't." He turned to leave. "Wait." The word came out before Selene could stop it. "Why?" Cassian paused, looked back over his shoulder. Rain dripped from his dark hair, ran down the sharp angles of his face. "Because men who hurt women in my city don't get second chances." Then he was gone. Back into the Rolls-Royce, headlights cutting through the storm one last time before the car slid into the night like it had never been there at all. Selene stood alone in the alley, clutching a blood-stained handkerchief and a business card, knowing she should throw both in the nearest dumpster and forget this ever happened. She didn't. She went back inside. Her hand shook as she pushed through the kitchen door, past the line cooks who didn't look up, past the manager's office where Eddie was counting receipts. The dining room was nearly empty now. Just a few stragglers finishing dessert. Eli sat at the corner booth where she'd left him, drawing on the back of receipt paper with a stubby pencil. He looked up when she approached, and his face went still. "It's okay," Selene said automatically. "I'm okay." But Eli's dark eyes, her sister's eyes, fixed on her throat, on the bruises already blooming purple against her skin. His mouth opened, closed. No sound came out. It never did. Not since the crash. Not since he'd watched his mother die on the side of the highway while his father burned in the driver's seat. "Really?" Selene said, forcing a smile that felt like shattered glass. "I just slipped. It's wet out there." Eli didn't believe her. She could see it in the way his small hands clenched around the pencil, knuckles white. But he was 9 and mute, and had already learned that the world was full of things he couldn't fix. "Come on." Selene held out her hand. "Let's go home." Home was a studio apartment in Washington Heights. 400 square feet. One window. Radiator that clanked like it was possessed. They'd been there 3 months, and Selene still didn't think of it as home. Home was something they'd lost when her sister died. When Riker had shown his true face. When running became the only option that made sense. Eli fell asleep fast, curled under the thin blanket on the pull-out couch they shared. Selene sat on the floor beside him, back against the wall, Cassian's business card turning over and over in her fingers. She should throw it away. She knew what men like Cassian Moreau wanted. Protection wasn't free. Debts got called in, and she'd spent too long digging herself out of one trap to walk straight into another. But Riker had found her. 3 months. 3 careful months of fake names and cash-only jobs, and never staying in one place too long. And he'd still found her, which meant he'd find her again. And next time, there wouldn't be a black Rolls-Royce sliding into the alley at exactly the right moment. Next time, she'd die. Or worse, Eli would. Selene's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She stared at it for 3 rings before answering. "Miss Vale," Cassian's voice. Calm. Like it was perfectly normal to call at midnight. "You haven't thrown away my card yet. How did you get this number? Does it matter?" Yes, no. She didn't know. Her head hurt. Her throat hurt. Everything hurt. What do you want? She asked. To make sure you got home safely. I did. Good. A pause. He's going to try again. Selene closed her eyes. I know. You can keep running. It won't work. Men like him don't quit. And men like you do? She heard something that might have been a laugh, dry, humorless. No, but we're better at finishing things. I don't want anyone dead. Then you're going to need a different kind of solution. Selene opened her eyes, looked at Eli sleeping, small and fragile and completely dependent on her to keep him safe. She'd promised her sister, promised on that hospital bed with machines beeping and doctors whispering and time running out, promised to protect him. No matter what. What kind of solution? She asked quietly. The kind where Riker Dane understands that touching you again means war. I can't afford you. I'm not asking for money. Selene's stomach tightened. Then what are you asking for? Nothing yet. Think of it as an investment. In what? The future. Cassian's tone shifted, became almost thoughtful. You're not from here. You're running from something. You have a kid with you who doesn't talk, and Riker Dane is obsessed enough to track you across state lines. That's a specific kind of problem, the kind that doesn't go away with a restraining order. You don't know anything about me. I know you're scared. I know you're running out of options. And I know that in about 2 minutes, you're going to hang up this phone and tell yourself you can handle this alone. Selene's jaw clenched. You're very sure of yourself. I've been doing this a long time. Doing what? Collecting broken people? Fixing problems. She should hang up, should block the number, should pack their bags right now and leave the city before dawn. I'm not one of your problems to fix, Selene said. No, but Riker Dane is, and he's going to keep coming until one of two things happens. Either you disappear completely, or he does. I'm not asking you to kill him. I'm not offering to. Then what? Marry me. The words hit like a fist. Selene's breath stopped. Her brain tried to process what she'd just heard and came up empty. What? Not really. A contract. 1 year. You and the boy move into my estate. You're under my protection. Riker sees that you belong to someone he can't touch, and he backs off. After a year, we dissolve the arrangement. You're free to go, no strings. That's insane. It's practical. Selene struggled to find words. You don't even know me. Why would you? Because I'm tired of watching men like Riker Dane think they own the world. Cassian's voice was still calm, but something underneath it had teeth. Because it costs me nothing to offer you protection, and it might cost you everything to refuse it. And because when I see a problem in my city, I fix it. I'm not a problem. I'm a person. I know. 2 words. Simple. But something in the way he said them made Selene's throat tighten. This is a bad idea, she whispered. Probably. I don't trust you. You shouldn't. Then why? Because trust isn't required. Only survival is. Selene looked at Eli again, at the bruises on her own wrists, at the thin apartment walls that wouldn't stop Riker if he decided to kick the door down. I need time to think, she said. You have until he comes back. After that, you won't have time for anything. The line went dead. Selene sat in the dark, phone pressed against her chest, mind racing. This was insane. Cassian Moreau wasn't a savior. He was a criminal, a killer. The kind of man who made offers that sounded like gifts but came with invisible chains. But Riker was worse. Riker had killed her sister. She was sure of it, and he'd kill her too, and then Eli would have no one, would end up in foster care, would disappear into a system that chewed up traumatized kids and spit out broken adults. She couldn't let that happen. The next 4 days passed like a held breath. Selene worked her shifts, walked Eli to the public school 3 blocks away, came home, locked the door, checked the windows, slept in 2-hour bursts, jerking awake at every sound. She didn't call Cassian, didn't throw away the card either. On the 5th day, Eli didn't come out of school. Selene stood at the pickup point, watching parents collect their kids, watching the crowd thin, watching the minutes tick by. Her heart started pounding. She pushed through the front doors down the hallway to his classroom. Empty. Excuse me. She grabbed a teacher. Eli Vale. 3rd grade. Where is he? Oh, his uncle picked him up early. The world tilted. His uncle? Yes. About 20 minutes ago. He had permission from the office. Selene ran. Down the hall. To the front office. The secretary looked up, startled. Who took Eli Vale? Selene demanded. The man said he was family. He had ID. He said there was a family emergency. Selene didn't wait to hear the rest. She was already moving, already pulling out her phone, already knowing exactly who had taken him. Riker. Her hand shook so hard she could barely dial. 3 numbers. 911. But even as her finger hovered over the call button, she knew it wouldn't matter. By the time police responded, by the time they cut through red tape and bureaucracy, Riker could be anywhere, could have Eli anywhere, could hurt him, could kill him, could make him disappear. Selene's finger moved, not to 911, to the contact she'd saved 4 days ago, the one she'd told herself she wouldn't use. It rang once. Miss Vale, Cassian's voice, still calm, like he'd been waiting. He took him. Selene's voice cracked. Riker took Eli. He walked into the school and they let him. Oh God, I can't. Where are you? PS 173, Washington Heights. Don't move. I have to find him. I have to. You won't. Not alone. Stay where you are. I'm 10 minutes away. Please. The word came out broken. Please, he's just a kid. I know. 10 minutes. The line went dead. Selene stood in the school parking lot, phone pressed against her mouth, trying not to scream. 10 minutes. What could happen in 10 minutes? What was Riker doing to Eli right now? She'd promised to keep him safe. She'd failed. 7 minutes later, the Rolls-Royce pulled up to the curb. Cassian stepped out, and this time he wasn't alone. 2 men flanked him, big, armed. The kind of men who made parents grab their kids and cross the street. Cassian walked straight to Selene. His eyes swept over her face, reading everything she couldn't say. Tell me exactly what happened. She did, stammering, tripping over words, hating how weak she sounded. Cassian pulled out his phone, made 3 calls, short, clipped, commands that people obeyed without question. Then he turned back to her. We have his location. How? Riker's not as smart as he thinks he is. He used a credit card 20 minutes ago at a motel in the Bronx. Is Eli us? We're about to find out. Cassian opened the car door. Get in. Selene didn't hesitate. She climbed into the back of the Rolls-Royce, her entire body vibrating with terror and rage, and something that felt dangerously close to relief. Cassian slid in beside her. The car moved. If he hurt him, Selene started. He won't have time to hurt him again. Cassian's voice was flat, final. I promise you that. The motel was exactly as grim as expected. Peeling paint, flickering vacancy sign. The kind of place where nobody asked questions and everyone minded their own business. Cassian's men moved first, silent, efficient. 2 minutes later, one of them came back out and nodded. Room 14, 2 occupants, male adult, male child. Selene tried to lunge out of the car, but Cassian's hand closed around her wrist. Wait, I can't. You can. His grip was firm but not painful. Rushing in gets people killed. Let my men handle it. He's my nephew, and he's about to be safe. Cassian's eyes held hers. Trust me. She didn't trust him, couldn't trust him, but she also didn't have a choice. The door to room 14 burst open. Shouts, movement, 30 seconds that felt like 30 years. Then one of Cassian's men emerged, carrying Eli. Selene was out of the car before it fully stopped. She grabbed Eli, pulled him into her arms, checked him for injuries with shaking hands. He was crying, silent, tears streaming down his face, but alive, whole. Did he hurt you? She whispered frantically. Eli, baby, did he? Eli shook his head, buried his face in her shoulder. Behind them, 2 men dragged Riker out of the motel room. He was screaming, fighting. Cassian walked toward him with the calm of someone inspecting a piece of furniture he was considering buying. You made a mistake, Cassian said quietly. She's mine, Riker spat blood. That kid is mine. You can't. I can. I am, and if you ever come near them again, I won't be this generous. Generous? Riker laughed wildly. You call this generous? Cassian leaned in close enough that Selene couldn't hear what he said, but she saw Riker's face go white, saw the fight drain out of him, saw him start to shake. "Do you understand?" Cassian asked. Riker nodded frantically. "Say it." "I understand. I'll leave them alone. I swear, I swear." Cassian straightened, nodded to his men. They let Riker go. He collapsed on the concrete, gasping. Cassian walked back to the car, to Selene and Eli, his expression unchanged. "It's done." "You're just letting him go?" Selene asked, incredulous. "For now. If he's smart, he'll disappear. If he's not—" Cassian shrugged. "Then he'll learn what generous actually means." Selene clutched Eli tighter. Her mind was screaming at her to say something, to do something, but her body wouldn't cooperate. She was shaking too hard. "Come with me," Cassian said. Not a question, not quite a command, somewhere in between. "Where?" "Somewhere safe." "I don't—" "Miss Vale," Cassian's voice softened just slightly. "You called me for a reason. Your nephew is terrified. Riker knows where you live, where Eli goes to school. He'll try again. Maybe not today. Maybe not this week. But he will try again, and next time I might not find him in time." Selene looked down at Eli, at his tear-stained face, at the way his small hands gripped her shirt like he'd never let go. "1 year," Cassian said. "Contract marriage. Legal protection. He won't touch you. After that, you can leave. No obligations, no strings." "Why?" Selene asked hoarsely. "Why do you care?" Cassian was quiet for a moment, then, "Because nobody helped me when I needed it, and I remember what that cost." It wasn't an answer, not really, but something in his voice made Selene believe him anyway. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, 1 year. But if you hurt him," she looked directly at Cassian, "if you hurt either of us, I won't." "How do I know that?" Cassian met her eyes. "You don't, but you know what Riker will do if you say no." He was right. She hated that he was right. "Okay," Selene said again. Cassian nodded once, opened the car door. "Then let's go home." Home, it turned out, was an estate that made Selene's breath catch. Sprawling, ancient, hidden behind iron gates and dense forest, the kind of place that existed in movies but not real life. Armed guards at the entrance, cameras everywhere. The main house looked like it had been stolen from Europe and transplanted onto American soil, all stone and stained glass and impossible elegance. Eli pressed his face against the car window, eyes wide. "We're staying here?" Selene asked faintly. "For now," Cassian said. Inside was even more overwhelming. Marble floors, vaulted ceilings, art that Selene suspected was worth more than she'd earn in 10 lifetimes. Staff appeared and disappeared like ghosts, taking their bags, offering food, asking if they needed anything. Cassian led them upstairs to a suite of rooms. 2 bedrooms connected by a sitting area. Bathroom with a tub big enough to swim in. Windows overlooking gardens that sprawled toward distant woods. "This is yours," Cassian said. "No one enters without permission. That includes me." Selene set Eli down carefully. He immediately started exploring, touching furniture like he was afraid it might vanish. "There's a full wardrobe in the closets," Cassian continued. "Kitchen staff can make anything you want. If you need something that's not here, tell Marcus. He's the head of household. He'll handle it." "This is—" Selene struggled for words. "This is too much. It's safe. That's what matters." She looked at him, really looked at him. Standing in the doorway of this impossibly expensive room, wearing his tailored coat and cold expression, and she realized she'd just handed her entire life to a man she didn't know. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now you rest. Tomorrow we handle the legal paperwork. After that, you live your life. Eli goes to a private school nearby. You're free to work if you want. Or not. Your choice." "And you?" "I run my business. We'll see each other at meals. Otherwise, this is your space. I won't intrude." It sounded reasonable, professional, like a business arrangement. So why did it feel like she'd just made a deal with the devil? Cassian turned to leave, then paused. "Miss Vale?" "Selene." "Selene." He tested the name. "You made the right choice. Did I? Time will tell. Time will—" Then he was gone, and Selene was alone with Eli in a palace that felt more like a beautiful cage, wondering what the hell she'd just agreed to and whether she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. Eli climbed onto the enormous bed, bouncing slightly, then looked at her with those dark, serious eyes. "Safe?" he whispered. First word he'd spoken in 6 months. Selene felt tears burn her eyes. She climbed onto the bed beside him, pulled him close. "Yeah, baby," she whispered back. "We're safe." But as she said it, watching through the window as Cassian crossed the grounds toward another building, flanked by armed men, she couldn't help but wonder what kind of safety required guards and gates and deals with criminals, and whether safety was just another word for a different kind of prison. The first week felt like living inside a museum. Selene woke every morning in sheets that cost more than her monthly rent, in a bed so large she could spread her arms and still not touch the edges. Eli slept in the adjoining room, door cracked open so she could hear him breathe. The silence was wrong, too complete. Back in Washington Heights, there'd been sirens and shouting and the constant hum of the city eating itself alive. Here, there was nothing. Just the whisper of wind through ancient trees and the occasional footstep of a guard making rounds. She didn't sleep well. Cassian kept his word. He didn't intrude. Meals appeared on schedule, breakfast at 8, lunch at 1, dinner at 7. A woman named Rosa brought the food, smiled kindly, never asked questions. Eli ate like he'd been starving his entire life. Selene picked at her plates and watched the door. On the third day, Cassian joined them for breakfast. He appeared in the dining room like he belonged there, which he did, it was his house, and took a seat across from Selene without asking permission. He wore a black shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, and looked like he hadn't slept either. Dark circles under those ice blue eyes, jaw tight. "How are you settling in?" he asked. Eli looked up from his pancakes, then back down. Selene set down her fork carefully. "Fine. That's not an answer." "It's the one you're getting." Cassian's mouth twitched, almost a smile. Not quite. "Marcus mentioned you haven't left the suite except for meals." "We're still adjusting." "You're hiding." "We're being careful." There's a difference between careful and afraid. Selene's hands clenched under the table. "You don't know what we've been through." "No, but I know what hiding looks like. And I know it doesn't help." Cassian nodded toward Eli. "He needs to feel safe. Walls and locks don't do that. Routine does. Normalcy does. There's nothing normal about this." "Then make it normal." "How?" Selene's voice rose despite herself. "How do I make any of this normal? We're living in a stranger's house because my nephew's father figure is a psychopath and I had to make a deal with—" She stopped, bit down hard on the rest of the sentence. "With what?" Cassian asked quietly. "Say it." "Nothing." "With a criminal? A killer? The devil?" He leaned forward slightly. "Go ahead. I've heard worse." Selene glanced at Eli. The boy was staring at his plate, shoulders hunched, and she knew he was listening to every word. She forced herself to breathe, to lower her voice. This was a mistake. Running was a mistake. Staying with Riker was a mistake. This? Cassian gestured around the room. This is survival. For how long? As long as it takes. That's not an answer either. Cassian stood, buttoned his cuffs with precise movements. Eli starts school on Monday. Private academy 15 minutes from here. Marcus will drive him. You'll have full access to the estate, grounds, library, pool, anywhere you want. There's a gym if you need to hit something. I recommend it. I don't need... Yes, you do. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and Selene felt stripped bare under that gaze. You're carrying everything alone. It's breaking you. Let someone else share the weight. Why would you care? Because I made a promise. He turned to leave, then paused. And because I know what it's like to carry something until it crushes you. Then he was gone. Selene sat in the silence, heart pounding, Eli's eyes on her face. I don't like him, she said quietly. Eli's hand found hers under the table. Squeezed once. Monday came too fast. Eli's new uniform hung in his closet. Crisp white shirt, navy slacks, tie that he refused to let Selene knot for him. He did it himself, fingers clumsy but determined, and when he finished he looked older. Too old. 9-year-old kids shouldn't have to grow up this fast. Marcus drove them in a black sedan that probably cost more than Celine's entire life savings. The school looked like something from a movie. Stone buildings, manicured lawns, kids in matching uniforms who looked like they'd never had to worry about anything more serious than which summer camp to attend. Eli gripped Celine's hand so hard her fingers went numb. "You'll be okay," she whispered. "It's just school." He shook his head once, sharp. "I'll be right here when you're done. I promise." He looked up at her with those dark, haunted eyes and mouthed a single word. "Don't. Don't leave. Don't disappear. Don't die like everyone else." Celine's throat closed. She knelt down, eye level with him. "I'm not going anywhere, you hear me? I'm staying right here in this city until you walk back out that door." Eli studied her face, looking for lies, for cracks. Finally, he nodded. Marcus escorted him inside. Selene watched through the car window until Eli disappeared into the building, swallowed by children who'd never understand what he'd survived. The drive back to the estate felt longer, emptier. Rosa met her at the door with a gentle smile. "Mr. Moreau asked if you'd join him in the library." "I'm tired." He said it was important. Selene followed Rosa through hallways that still felt foreign, down corridors lined with portraits of people long dead, until they reached a room that smelled like leather and old paper. Cassian sat behind a massive desk, reading something on his phone. He looked up when she entered. "Eli, get in okay?" "Yes." "Good." He set down his phone. "We need to discuss the contract." "Now?" "The lawyer's coming at 2. I want you to understand what you're signing." Selene crossed her arms. "I already know. Fake marriage. 1 year. Protection." "It's more complicated than that." "How?" Cassian pulled out a folder. Thick, legal-sized papers covered in text too small to read from across the room. "Everything you and Eli own becomes legally tied to me. Your bank accounts. Your lease, though that's already terminated. Your employment history. On paper, you're my wife, which means anything you do reflects on me. I'm not planning on doing anything." "Good. Because if Riker tries to come after you legally, custody battle for instance, this makes it significantly harder for him. He'd have to go through me, and my lawyers are better." Selene frowned. "He doesn't have custody rights. Eli's not even his biological kid." "Doesn't matter. He was engaged to Eli's mother, could argue common law guardianship, could claim you're unstable, unfit. There are a dozen ways he could twist this. And marriage to you prevents that? Marriage to me makes it expensive to try." Cassian leaned back. "I'm not just offering you protection from physical harm. I'm offering you legal protection, financial protection, the kind that makes men like Riker decide it's not worth the fight." It made sense. Cold, calculated sense. But something about it made Selene's skin crawl. "What do you get out of this?" she asked. "I told you." "No, really. What do you get?" She stepped closer to the desk. "Nobody does this out of the goodness of their heart, especially not men like you." Cassian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was carefully neutral. "I have enemies, rival syndicates, feds looking for leverage. Having a family makes me look stable, legitimate, less like a threat and more like a businessman. So I'm a prop. You're a partner in a mutually beneficial arrangement. That's corporate speak for prop. Call it what you want, doesn't change the terms." Selene wanted to walk out, wanted to grab Eli from that fancy school and run. But where? Back to cheap motels and looking over her shoulder? Back to waiting for Riker to find them again? "When do I sign?" she asked tiredly. "After you read it, all of it." Cassian pushed the folder across the desk. "I'm not trapping you, but I need you to understand what this means." Selene took the folder. It weighed more than it should. The lawyer arrived at 2. A woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a sharper suit. She went through every clause, every stipulation, every legal ramification with the kind of thoroughness that made Selene's head spin. By the time they finished, it was nearly 5. "Do you have any questions?" the lawyer asked. Selene had 1,000. She asked none of them. "No." "Then sign here and here. Initial here." The pen felt heavy. Selene's hand shook slightly as she signed her name over and over. Selene Vale. soon to be Selene Moreau. A name that didn't belong to her, a life that didn't belong to her. When it was done, the lawyer packed up her briefcase and left with a businesslike nod. Cassian escorted her out. Selene sat alone in the library, staring at her own signature on the contract, and wondered what her sister would think. Would think she'd sold her soul. Would probably be right. Marcus brought Eli home at 3:30. The boy looked exhausted, uniform rumpled, tie askew. But when Selene asked how it went, he shrugged. Not terrible then. That night at dinner, Cassian asked Eli about school. The boy ignored him, focused entirely on his food. Cassian didn't push, just ate in silence and left without comment. The pattern repeated for days. Cassian would ask, Eli would ignore. Selene would feel the tension coil tighter in her chest. On Friday, Cassian changed tactics. Instead of questions, he set a sketch pad and charcoal pencils beside Eli's plate. The boy stared at them, then at Cassian. I noticed you draw, Cassian said simply. These are better quality than what you've been using. Eli picked up the pencil, tested it against the paper. His eyes widened slightly. If you want more supplies, tell Marcus. Or tell me. Eli nodded. Once. Small. Progress. Selene hated that it worked. The second week, Cassian started joining them for breakfast every morning. He didn't talk much, just sat there, reading newspapers, occasionally commenting on something happening in the city. Eli slowly relaxed, started drawing at the table, started glancing at Cassian when he thought the man wasn't looking. Selene watched it happen and felt something dark twist in her gut. On Thursday morning, she cornered Cassian in the hallway after breakfast. What are you doing? He looked at her calmly. Walking to my office. With Eli. What are you doing with him? Building trust. Why? Because he's terrified, and children need stability. He doesn't need you to be his father. Something flickered across Cassian's face, too fast to read. I'm not trying to replace anyone. Then what are you trying to do? Help. We don't need... Yes, you do. Cassian's voice stayed level, but there was steel underneath. You're drowning, Selene. You won't admit it, but you are. And Eli needs more than a guardian who's barely holding it together. The words hit like a slap. You don't know anything about what I can handle. I know you haven't slept more than 3 hours a night since you got here. I know you barely eat. I know you spend every moment waiting for the next disaster. Cassian stepped closer, and Selene fought the urge to back away. I'm not judging. I'm stating facts. And the fact is, you need help whether you want it or not. From you? From anyone, but I'm the one here. Selene's hands clenched into fists. You don't get to tell me how to take care of him. Then start taking care of yourself so you can take care of him. What the hell does that mean? It means stop treating this place like a prison and start treating it like a home. It means let someone else carry some of the weight. It means trust that maybe, just maybe, I actually meant what I said when I promised to protect you. Why should I trust you? Because I haven't given you a reason not to. He walked away before she could respond. Selene stood in the empty hallway, heart pounding, fury and fear mixing into something she couldn't name. That night, she went to the gym. The room was state-of-the-art, weights, machines, a boxing setup in the corner with a heavy bag that looked well used. Selene wrapped her hands the way her sister had taught her years ago, before Riker, before everything fell apart, and started hitting. She hit until her knuckles ached, hit until sweat poured down her face, hit until the anger started to break apart into something raw. She didn't hear Cassian enter, didn't know he was there until he spoke. Your form's off. Selene spun around, chest heaving. Excuse me? Cassian stood in the doorway, dressed in workout clothes that made him look less like a crime lord and more like something that belonged on a magazine cover. He walked over to the bag, studied it. You're putting all your power into your arm. Use your whole body. I don't need boxing lessons. No, you need to hit something without breaking your hand. He demonstrated, throwing a clean punch that made the bag swing. Rotate through your hips. Let your legs drive it. Why do you care? Because you're going to injure yourself, and then you'll be useless to Eli. Selene wanted to argue, wanted to tell him to leave, but her knuckles throbbed and she knew he was right. She tried again, rotating her hips the way he'd shown. The bag moved harder. Better, Cassian said. Again. They worked for 20 minutes, Cassian correcting her form, showing her how to breathe, how to move. It should have felt invasive. Instead, it felt like the first time since arriving that she wasn't drowning. When they finished, Selene's entire body ached. Thanks, she said grudgingly. Come back tomorrow, same time. Why? Because you need this. Cassian headed for the door, then paused. And because teaching someone to fight is easier than teaching them to trust. He left before she could ask what he meant. The routine continued. Every night, Selene went to the gym. Every night, Cassian showed up. They didn't talk much, just worked, punches, footwork, defense. He was patient in a way that surprised her. Never pushed, never judged when she messed up. And slowly, against every instinct screaming at her to keep her guard up, Selene started to relax. Not much, just enough to be dangerous. On the third week, Eli spoke his second word. They were at breakfast. Cassian was reading the newspaper. Eli was drawing. Selene was pushing eggs around her plate. More. Everyone froze. Eli pointed at the orange juice pitcher. Cassian recovered first. He poured more juice into Eli's glass with steady hands, face carefully neutral. Good? He asked. Eli nodded. Selene felt tears burn her eyes. She excused herself before either of them could see, practically ran to the bathroom, locked the door, and pressed her forehead against the cool tile. One word had taken 6 months, 2 words in 3 weeks. And it was Cassian who'd made it happen. She wanted to be grateful. Instead, she felt terrified, because Eli was getting attached. And attachments meant vulnerability. And vulnerability meant pain when everything inevitably fell apart. That night in the gym, Cassian asked, "You okay?" "Fine." "You're lying." "How would you know?" "Because you hit like you're trying to kill someone today." Selene drove another punch into the bag. "Maybe I am." "Who?" "Riker. You. Myself. Pick one." Cassian caught the bag, stopped its motion. "Why me?" "Because you're making this complicated." "How?" "Eli likes you." The words came out harder than she intended. "He's getting attached. And when this year is over and we leave, it's going to destroy him." "Then don't leave." Selene's breath caught. "That's not the deal." "The deal is 1 year minimum. Doesn't mean you have to leave after." "Yes, it does." "Why?" "Because this isn't real." Selene shoved away from the bag. "This house, this life, this—" She gestured between them. "Whatever this is, it's not real. It's a transaction. And I can't let Eli think it's anything more." Cassian was quiet for a long moment. What if it could be? Could be what? Real. Selene stared at him. "You're not serious." "I'm always serious. This was a business arrangement. You said so yourself." "It started that way, and it stays that way." Selene's voice shook. I can't what?" "I can't trust this. Any of this. Men who seem safe always turn out to be monsters." "I'm not Riker." "No, you're worse. At least with Riker, I knew what he was from the start. You?" She laughed, but it came out broken. "You're dangerous in a different way. You're making me forget why I should be scared." Cassian stepped closer. Selene's back hit the wall. "Should you be scared of me?" he asked quietly. "I don't know. That's the problem." His hand came up, not quite touching her face, hovering inches away. "I would never hurt you. Everyone says that. I'm not everyone. Prove it." The challenge hung between them. Cassian's hand dropped. He stepped back. "I will." Then he left. Selene slid down the wall, wrapped her arms around her knees, and tried to remember why keeping her distance was supposed to keep her safe. The following week, everything changed. It started with a phone call. Selene's old phone, the one she'd kept but never used, rang at 2 a.m. She jolted awake, heart hammering, and stared at the unknown number glowing in the dark. She shouldn't answer. She answered. "Selene," Riker's voice, smooth, calm, wrong. "We need to talk." She hung up immediately, blocked the number. Her hand shook so hard she dropped the phone. He'd found her number, still had it, was calling in the middle of the night because he knew it would terrify her. It worked. She didn't tell Cassian, didn't tell anyone. Just lay awake the rest of the night, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the other shoe to drop. The second call came 3 nights later. Different number, same voice. You can't hide forever. She blocked it, but more came. Different numbers. Always between 2 and 4 a.m. Always the same message. I'm watching. You think he can protect you? Eli misses me. Lies. All lies. But they burrowed under her skin anyway. On the 5th night, Cassian knocked on her door at 3 a.m. Selene opened it, phone in hand, another blocked number still glowing on the screen. How long? He asked. What? How long has he been calling? Don't lie to me. Cassian's voice was controlled, but barely. My security flagged unusual activity on the cellular networks near your phone. Multiple blocked numbers, nighttime calls. How long? Selene's throat closed. A week. A week. Cassian ran a hand through his hair. And you didn't think to mention it? I handled it. By blocking numbers? That's not handling it. That's ignoring it. What was I supposed to do? Tell me. The words came out sharp, loud. Cassian immediately lowered his voice. You were supposed to tell me so I could handle it. I don't need you to. Yes, you do. That's the entire point of this arrangement. He pulled out his own phone, started typing. Give me your phone. Why? Because I'm changing your number, and then I'm tracking down every number he's used and making sure he can't get another one. You can do that? Cassian looked at her like she'd asked if water was wet. I own half the underground telecommunications network in this city. Yes, I can do that. He took her phone, their fingers brushed. Selene jerked back like she'd been burned. I'm sorry, she said quietly. For what? For not telling you. Cassian's jaw clenched. I'm not angry that you didn't trust me. I'm angry that he made you scared in your own home. This isn't my home. It is now. He met her eyes, and I'm going to make sure he knows it. The next morning, Cassian was gone. Marcus mentioned something about business in the city. Selene didn't ask for details. Didn't want to know what making sure Riker knows actually meant. He returned at sunset. No blood on his clothes, no visible injuries. Just that same controlled calm he always wore. At dinner, he set a new phone beside Selene's plate. New number. Only people who have it are in this house and Eli's school. He can't reach you anymore. Thank you. Cassian nodded once, then turned to Eli. How was school? Eli looked between them, reading the tension neither adult was hiding well. Then he picked up his new charcoal pencil and drew on his napkin. 3 people, standing together. 1 tall, 1 medium, 1 small. He pushed the napkin toward Cassian. Us? Cassian asked carefully. Eli nodded. Something in Cassian's expression cracked. Just for a second, then smoothed over. Yeah, he said quietly. Us. That night, Selene couldn't sleep. She went to the gym at midnight. Cassian was already there, hitting the heavy bag with controlled fury. He didn't acknowledge her, just kept punching. Selene watched him. Really watched. The precision, the control, the way every movement was calculated, even when he was clearly furious. What did you do to him? She asked. Cassian's fist stopped mid-swing. Nothing permanent. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. He turned to face her. He won't call again. How can you be sure? Because I made it clear what happens if he does. Which is? Does it matter? Yes. Cassian studied her face. You really want to know? Selene hesitated, then nodded. I visited his apartment, explained that every phone number he buys gets burned, every job he applies for gets rejected, every bank account gets frozen, every friend he has gets a visit. I explained that I can make his life disappear piece by piece without ever touching him. Cassian's voice was perfectly calm. And then I explained what happens if he does anything stupid enough to make me actually touch him. Selene's stomach churned. That's illegal? Immoral? Excessive? Cassian shrugged. Call it what you want, but he won't bother you again. You can't know that. I can, because men like Riker are cowards, push back hard enough and they fold. And if he doesn't, then I'll make good on my promises. The certainty in his voice should have scared her. Instead, It made something in Selene's chest ease for the first time in years. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me for doing what I said I'd do. I'm not thanking you for the deal. I'm thanking you for—" She struggled for words. "For caring whether he scared me." Cassian crossed the space between them, stopped close enough that Selene had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "I care about a lot more than whether he scared you," he said quietly. "Don't." "Don't what?" "Don't make this complicated. Too late." "Cassian, I'm not asking for anything, but I'm not going to lie about what's happening here. Nothing's happening here. Keep telling yourself that." He walked out. Selene stood alone in the gym, heart racing, and knew he was right. Something was happening, something dangerous, something that felt like falling. The fourth week ended with a dinner party. Cassian had business associates coming, important people. Selene was expected to attend as his wife, play the part, smile, make small talk. She'd rather eat glass. But Eli was excited. He'd picked out his outfit, a tiny suit that made him look impossibly grown up, and kept asking if he could stay up late to see the guests. "Just for appetizers," Selene had said, "then bed." Now standing in front of her closet in a dress that cost more than her car used to, Selene felt like she was wearing a costume. The woman in the mirror looked elegant, polished, nothing like the waitress who'd almost died in an alley 4 weeks ago. Rosa knocked softly. "They're arriving." Selene took a breath, descended the stairs. The foyer was full of people in expensive clothes, holding expensive drinks, talking about expensive things. Cassian stood in the center, completely in his element, and when he saw Selene, his expression shifted into something that made her stomach flip. He crossed to her, took her hand, kissed her knuckles in a gesture that looked natural but felt like fire against her skin. "You look beautiful," he said quietly. "I look like I'm playing dress-up. You look like you belong here." "I don't." "Not yet." He kept her hand as he introduced her to his associates. Names and faces blurred together. Everyone was polite, careful, watching to see how Cassian's new wife fit into his world. Selene played the part, smiled, made appropriate noises, felt like she was suffocating. Eli appeared halfway through appetizers, freshly scrubbed, eyes bright. Several guests commented on how handsome he looked. Eli beamed. Then a man Selene didn't recognize knelt down to Eli's level. "And who's this little guy?" "My son," Cassian said smoothly. The man blinked. "I didn't know you had a son." "Recent development." "Adoption?" "Yes." The man straightened, something calculating in his eyes. "Quite the sudden family you've built. When you find the right people, you don't wait." The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. He moved on. But Selene saw the way he looked back at Eli, the way others started whispering. This was a mistake. She should never have let Eli come downstairs. After the guests left, Selene found Cassian in his office. He was pouring whiskey like the night was already giving him a headache. "Who was that man?" she demanded. "The one who asked about Eli." "Victor Krause, runs the Eastern Territory." "He was looking at Eli like a weakness." "I know." "Then why did you tell him?" "Because he was going to find out anyway." Cassian downed his drink. Better to control the narrative. By painting a target on a 9-year-old? By making it clear that touching him means war. That's not protection. That's how this world works. Cassian slammed the glass down. You wanted safety. This is what safety costs. People know about Eli now, know about you, know that you're mine, which means anyone who wants to get to me has to go through you first. So we're bait. Your family. What's the difference? Cassian was quiet for a long moment, then, everything. Selene shook her head. This was a mistake, all of it. I should never have. Then leave. The words hit like ice water. What? You want out? Leave. I'll keep you protected from a distance. Set you up somewhere safe. You and Eli can disappear properly this time. You'd let us go? I'm not keeping you prisoner. Then why? Because I thought you wanted to stay. Cassian's control finally cracked. I thought, Christ, I don't know what I thought, that maybe this could be real, that maybe you'd want. He cut himself off, pressed his palms flat against the desk. But if you want to leave, then leave. Selene stared at him. at the tension in his shoulders, the white-knuckle grip on the desk edge. "What do you want?" she asked quietly. Cassian looked up, met her eyes. "I want you to stay." "Why?" "Because somewhere between protecting you and teaching Eli to smile again, He stopped, shook his head. "Doesn't matter." "Say it." "No." "Cassian." "Because I'm falling in love with you." The words exploded out of him. "And Eli, and this." He gestured vaguely at the room, the house, everything. "This life we've built in 4 weeks, and I know it's not real. I know it's supposed to be a business arrangement, but I can't keep pretending I'm just playing a part when every morning I wake up wanting it to be real." Silence crashed over the room. Selene couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't process what she'd just heard. "You're insane," she whispered. "Probably. We barely know each other. I know you take your coffee black. I know you haven't slept through a full night since you got here. I know you check on Eli 17 times before you let yourself try to sleep. I know you cry in the shower because you think no one can hear. I know you're terrified of trusting anyone, but you trust me enough to let me near Eli. I know—" "Stop." Cassian stopped. Selene wrapped her arms around herself. "You can't love me. You don't even know me." "Then let me. This isn't a romance. This is survival." "Why can't it be both?" "Because—" her voice broke. "Because everyone I've ever trusted has hurt me. And you're the most dangerous person I've ever met. And if I let myself believe this is real, and it's not, it will kill me." "It's real," Cassian said quietly. "At least for me it is." "I can't— I'm not asking you to love me back. I'm just asking you to stop running." "I don't know how." Cassian crossed the room, stopped in front of her, didn't touch, but stood close enough that Selene could feel the warmth coming off him. "Then learn. With me. Here. Stop treating this like a prison sentence and start treating it like a home. And if it all falls apart, then we'll deal with it. Together." Selene looked up at him, at those ice-blue eyes that had terrified her a month ago and now just made her feel seen in a way that was almost unbearable. "You're asking for something I don't know if I can give. I'm asking you to try. And if I can't, then I'll settle for you staying." Selene's resolve crumbled. She took one step forward, then another, until she was close enough to touch him. Didn't. Just stood there, breathing, trying to remember all the reasons this was a bad idea. She couldn't think of a single one that mattered. "I'm terrified," she whispered. "I know. I don't trust this. I know. I don't trust you. I know." Cassian's hand came up, cupped her face with heartbreaking gentleness. "But you're still here." "I'm still here," she echoed. Then she kissed him. Or he kissed her. She wasn't sure who moved first, didn't matter. His mouth was warm and careful and tasted like whiskey and something darker she couldn't name. His hand slid into her hair, holding her like she was precious instead of broken. And for the first time in years, Selene stopped running, just for a moment, just long enough to feel what it might be like to be safe. The kiss broke. They stood there, foreheads pressed together, breathing hard. "This is a terrible idea," Selene said. "Absolutely. We're going to regret this." "Probably." "I don't know what I'm doing. Neither do I." She laughed. It came out shaky but real. Cassian smiled, actually smiled, not that controlled, almost expression he usually wore. "We should—" Selene started. The window exploded inward. Glass shattered everywhere. Selene screamed. Cassian yanked her down, covered her body with his as something heavy hit the floor, and rolled. A brick, with paper wrapped around it. Cassian grabbed it, tore off the paper, read what was written there. His face went white. "What?" Selene demanded. "What does it say?" Cassian showed her. 3 words, written in red marker. "I'm coming back." The glass crunched under Cassian's shoes as he moved to the shattered window. Every muscle in his body coiled tight. Selene stayed on the floor, heart hammering so hard she could hear it in her ears. The brick sat between them like a bomb that had already detonated. "I'm coming back." 3 words. Red marker. Riker's handwriting. "Stay down," Cassian said. His voice had gone cold. "Dead." The warmth from 30 seconds ago, the kiss, the confession, the moment of vulnerability evaporated like it had never existed. He pulled out his phone, pressed one button. Perimeter breach. West side. Get everyone up here now. Footsteps thundered through the house within seconds. Armed men flooded the office. Marcus appeared in the doorway, weapon drawn, face grim. Grounds? Cassian asked. Clear. Cameras caught nothing. Whoever threw it knew the blind spots. Cassian's jaw clenched. Eli? In his room, door locked, 2 guards outside. Get him down to the safe room, now. Already done. Selene scrambled to her feet, glass falling from her dress. I need to see him. You need to stay here, Cassian said without looking at her. He's terrified. He's safe. You moving around makes you a target. I don't care. I do. Cassian finally turned to face her, and the expression on his face made Selene take an involuntary step back. This wasn't the man who'd kissed her. This was something else, something that belonged in the dark where violence lived. You want to help Eli? You stay alive. That means you stay here until I know this property is secure. Marcus cleared his throat. Sir, we should move you both to the panic room. No. Cassian was already moving toward the door. Double the guard rotation. No one in or out without my authorization. Run thermal scans on every inch of the grounds. If there's anyone hiding out there, I want them found. Where are you going? Selene demanded. Cassian paused in the doorway. To have a conversation with Riker Dane. You said he wouldn't come back. You said I was wrong. Then he was gone. Selene stood in the destroyed office, surrounded by armed men who wouldn't meet her eyes, and felt the fragile safety she'd built over 4 weeks shatter as completely as the window. Marcus gestured toward the door. Ma'am, we need to get you secured. I want to see Eli. The safe room is... I know where it is. Take me there. Marcus hesitated, then nodded. They moved through hallways that suddenly felt hostile instead of familiar, past more guards than Selene had realized lived on the property. Downstairs she didn't know existed until they reached a reinforced door that looked like it belonged in a bank vault. Marcus pressed his palm against a scanner. The door opened with a hydraulic hiss. Inside, Eli sat on a leather couch that probably cost more than Selene's childhood home, clutching the sketchpad Cassian had given him. His face was pale. When he saw Selene, he launched himself at her. She caught him, held him tight, felt his silent sobs shake through his small body. It's okay, she whispered. Lying. We're safe here. But they weren't safe. The brick proved it. Riker had gotten onto the grounds, past the guards, past the cameras, past every expensive security measure Cassian owned. And if he could get close enough to throw a brick through a window, he could get close enough to do much worse. Rosa appeared with blankets and hot chocolate that nobody touched. The safe room was beautiful in the way everything in this house was beautiful. Persian rugs, mahogany furniture, artwork that belonged in museums. But beauty didn't stop bullets, didn't stop obsessed ex-fiancés who knew how to exploit weaknesses. Selene sat on the couch with Eli tucked against her side and waited. 2 hours passed like 2 years. Finally, the door opened. Cassian stepped through, and Selene's stomach dropped at what she saw on his face. He looked like he'd aged a decade. Blood on his knuckles, shirt untucked, hair disheveled. But it was his eyes that scared her, empty in a way she'd never seen. Did you find him? She asked. No. Then how? We found where he threw it from. Ladder against the back wall. Bolt cutters on the fence. Cassian's voice was flat. Professional. He's not on the property anymore. How long was he here? Long enough. Eli pressed closer to Selene. She wrapped her arms tighter around him, feeling his heartbeat rabbit quick against her ribs. So what now? She asked. Now we wait. For what? For him to make his next move. That's it? We just sit here and wait for him to... What do you want me to say, Selene? Cassian's control cracked. That I can protect you from someone who's clearly been watching this house long enough to know our security blind spots? That I can guarantee your safety when he just proved he can walk onto my property whenever he wants? He laughed, and it came out bitter. I promised you protection. Turns out my promises aren't worth much. Don't. Don't what? Don't tell you the truth? You deserve the truth. The truth is I underestimated him. I thought threats would be enough, thought making his life difficult would make him back off. I was wrong. Selene stood carefully, keeping Eli behind her. So fix it. How? You're Cassian Moreau. You run half the criminal empire in this city. Figure it out. You think I haven't been trying? Cassian's voice rose. You think I haven't had men looking for him for weeks? He's smart. Smarter than I gave him credit for. He's not using his own name, not using credit cards, not staying anywhere we can track. He's operating like someone who's done this before. He has done this before. With my sister. The words fell like stones. Cassian went still. What? Selene's throat tightened. Before the crash. Before everything. He stalked her for months, made her life hell. The police couldn't do anything because he never technically broke any laws. Just showed up places she was. Left notes, called from burner phones, made her paranoid and terrified until she couldn't function anymore. You never told me that. You never asked. Because I assumed... Cassian cut himself off, pressed his palms against his eyes. I assumed he was just another abusive ex, not someone who's actually skilled at this. Now you know. Now I know I'm in over my head. The admission hung in the air like a death sentence. Selene felt something cold settle in her chest. This was the moment. The moment when the devil admitted he couldn't protect her. When the illusion of safety finally shattered completely. We should leave, she said quietly. That won't help. At least we'd be moving targets instead of sitting ones. Selene, you said if we wanted to leave, we could leave. So we're leaving. No, Cassian's voice went hard. You're not. You can't keep us here against our will. I'm not. He stopped, started again, forcing calm into his voice. If you leave now, he wins. He wants you scared, wants you running, makes it easier for him to find you when you don't have walls and guards between you. These walls didn't stop him tonight, but they slowed him down, kept him from getting to you. If you're out there alone, we won't be alone. Selene's mind raced, trying to find a solution that didn't exist. I'll go to the police. And tell them what? That your ex-fiancé threw a brick through a window? They'll file a report and forget about it. Then I'll get a restraining order, which he'll violate the second you leave this property. Then what do you suggest? Selene's voice cracked. We just wait here until he decides to escalate, until a brick becomes something worse? Cassian opened his mouth, closed it. He had no answer. Eli's hand found Selene, squeezed once. She looked down at him, at those dark eyes full of trust she didn't deserve, and felt something inside her break. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry, baby. Don't apologize to him, Cassian said. This isn't your fault. Isn't it? I brought this to your door. I should have stayed away, should have kept running. You would have died. Maybe that would have been better than dragging you both into this. Don't. Cassian crossed the space between them in 3 strides, grabbed her shoulders. Don't you dare say that. Don't you dare think that. Why not? It's true. Eli would be better off. Would be better. Eli would be in foster care, alone, traumatized, without anyone who loves him. Cassian's grip tightened. You saved his life by coming here. Don't rewrite history because things got complicated. Complicated? A brick through your window is complicated? Yes, but it's not the end. Feels like it. Then you're not looking hard enough. Selene pulled away from him. What's that supposed to mean? Before Cassian could answer, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and his expression shifted into something Selene couldn't read. What? She asked. It's Riker. The world tilted. How does he have your number? I don't know, Cassian answered, put it on speaker. You've got 30 seconds before I trace this call and send people to wherever you're hiding. Please. Riker's voice came through tinny but smug. You think I'm stupid enough to use a phone you can trace? I'm disappointed, Moreau. What do you want? To talk to Selene. Not happening. Then Eli dies. Silence crashed over the safe room. Eli went rigid against Selene's side. Her vision narrowed to a pinpoint. You're bluffing, Cassian said, but his voice had gone tight. Am I? Check the north garden, near the fountain. You'll find a present I left. Cassian snapped his fingers at Marcus, who immediately pulled out his phone and started barking orders. 30 seconds later, Marcus's face went white. "Sir, what is it?" Cassian demanded. Marcus turned his phone around. On the screen was a photo of Eli's backpack, the one he'd taken to school that morning, sitting beside the fountain, spray painted across the stone in red. "Next time it won't be empty." "Jesus Christ," Cassian breathed. "Now do I have your attention?" Riker asked. "Put Selene on the phone." Cassian looked at Selene. She nodded shakily and took the phone. "I'm here." "Hello, sweetheart." Riker's voice dropped into that false gentleness she remembered too well. "Miss me?" "Go to hell." "I will, but I'm taking you with me." He paused. "You thought you could replace me? Thought you could play house with a mob boss and I'd just disappear?" "You said you'd leave us alone," Cassian said. Cassian lied, or maybe he just underestimated me. Either way, here we are. Selene's hand shook so hard she almost dropped the phone. "What do you want?" "Simple. You and Eli meet me. Alone. No guards. No Cassian. No weapons." "Absolutely not," Cassian said loudly. "Shut up, or the deal's off," Riker snapped. Then softer, to Selene. "You come to me and I disappear, for real this time. I just need to know you understand that you made the wrong choice, that you see what happens when you run. I'll never go back to you. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to admit I won. That's all. One conversation, face to face. Then you can go back to your criminal boyfriend and pretend you're happy. This is insane. This is what happens when you humiliate me." Riker's voice spiked, then dropped again. Controlled. Calculated. "You made me look weak. Made me look like I couldn't hold on to my own woman. Do you know what that cost me? The respect I lost? I was never your woman. You were mine the second your sister died and you had nowhere else to go." The words hit like a physical blow. Selene's breath stopped. "What did you say?" Riker laughed, slow, dark. "Oh, sweetheart, you still think that was an accident? The crash wasn't a crash, it was a message." Selene's legs gave out. She would have hit the floor if Cassian hadn't caught her. He steadied her with one arm while his other hand hovered near the phone, ready to snatch it away. "You're lying," Selene whispered. "Am I?" Ask yourself, why would a careful driver like your sister suddenly lose control on a straight highway in good weather? Why would the brake lines fail? Why would the fire start so fast the investigators couldn't determine the real cause? No. I needed her gone. She was in the way, and you— His voice turned almost gentle. "You were so grateful for my support after she died. So vulnerable, so easy to control." "You killed her?" Selene couldn't breathe, couldn't think. "You killed my sister to get to me. I loved you. Love makes people do terrible things. That's not love." Semantics. Riker's tone shifted back to business. "Here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow night, midnight, the old warehouse district on Pier 47. You know the one, near where you used to work in Boston before you ran. Come alone. Bring Eli. We'll talk. Then I'll leave and you'll never hear from me again." "I won't." "Yes, you will. Because if you don't, I'll burn that entire estate to the ground with everyone inside. I've already placed charges in 3 locations on the property. My finger's on the trigger. Literally." He paused. "You have 24 hours to decide whether Cassian Moreau's life is worth more than your pride." The line went dead. Selene dropped the phone. Cassian caught it before it hit the ground. Immediately started barking orders at Marcus about sweeping the property for explosives. But Selene couldn't hear him, couldn't hear anything over the roaring in her ears. Riker killed her sister. The crash wasn't an accident. Everything, the grief, the guilt, the responsibility she'd felt for not protecting her sister, all of it had been built on a lie. And Riker had let her suffer, let her break under the weight of it, because it made her easier to control. "Selene," Cassian's voice cut through the static in her head. "Look at me." She couldn't. "Selene, he killed her." The words came out broken. "He killed Sarah and let me think it was my fault. Let me think I should have protected her better. Let me carry that for 3 years while he—" Her voice cracked. "While he pretended to comfort me. I know." "You don't know. You can't—" "I know what it's like to have someone you love murdered. I know what it's like to carry that weight. And I know what it's like to want revenge so badly it becomes the only thing keeping you breathing. Cassian pulled her to face him. But you're not going to that warehouse. He'll kill you. He'll kill everyone here. He's bluffing about the explosives. What if he's not? Then we find them. We have people sweeping the property right now, bomb-sniffing dogs on the way. We'll find them. And if you don't, if you miss even one, Selene grabbed his shirt. I can't let you die for me. I can't let Eli grow up knowing more people died because of me. That's not... It is. Don't you see? Everyone around me dies or gets hurt. My sister, you almost died tonight. Eli almost... She couldn't finish. I should never have called you, should never have dragged you into this. Stop. I won't, because you need to hear this. You need to understand that the best thing I can do for everyone is leave. Take Eli and disappear and let Riker chase us until what? Until he kills you. That's not a solution. It's the only one that doesn't risk your life. Cassian's hands came up to frame her face, forcing her to look at him. You think I'd let you walk out of here to die? You think I'd survive that? You'd survive. You survived before you met me. I wasn't living before you. I was existing. There's a difference. Stop it. Stop making this harder than it has to be. I'm not making it harder. I'm telling you the truth. You and Eli... His voice cracked. You made me remember what it feels like to have something worth protecting besides money and power. And I'm not letting that go without a fight. Even if it kills you, especially if it kills me. Because dying to protect you would mean more than every day I've lived protecting myself. Selene felt tears burn her eyes. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Probably. You're supposed to be smart, ruthless. I'm supposed to choose myself. I know, but I'm choosing you instead. Why? Because I love you. He said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. And I'd rather die protecting you than live knowing I let you walk into a trap. Selene broke. The tears came and she couldn't stop them. Cassian pulled her against his chest, held her while she shook, while Eli pressed against her side, while the weight of 3 years of lies and grief and terror finally crashed down. I don't know what to do, she whispered. You trust me. I don't know how. Then learn, starting now. Marcus appeared in the doorway. Sir, we finished the first sweep. No explosives found. Keep looking. There's something else. Marcus's face was grim. We traced the call. Triangulated the location. Where? An apartment building in Brooklyn. We sent a team. They found... He hesitated. They found surveillance equipment, cameras, long-range listening devices, transcripts of conversations from inside this house. Cassian went very still. How long? Based on the files, at least 6 weeks. 6 weeks. 2 weeks before Selene and Eli even arrived. He's been planning this, Cassian said quietly. This wasn't improvised. He knew exactly what he was doing. There's more. Marcus pulled out his phone, showed them a photo. We found these pinned to the wall. Pictures. Dozens of them. Selene leaving the restaurant in Manhattan. Eli walking into school. Cassian at breakfast reading the newspaper. The dinner party. The gym. Every moment of the past month, captured and cataloged like specimens under glass. Jesus, Cassian breathed. But Selene's eyes had caught on something else. A photo tucked in the corner. Her sister. Standing outside a grocery store. Date stamped 3 days before the crash. He was following her, Selene said numbly. He was following Sarah and I never knew. You couldn't have known, Cassian said. I should have. I should have seen. Selene. All those times she said she felt watched. All those times I told her she was being paranoid. I didn't believe her and she died because... Stop. Cassian grabbed her shoulders. This is what he wants. He wants you spiraling, wants you broken. Don't give him that. It's too late. I'm already broken. No, you're angry. There's a difference. He was right. Under the grief and terror, something else was building. Something hot and sharp and dangerous. Rage, pure and clean and focused. I want him dead, Selene said. I know. I want him to hurt the way he hurt my sister, the way he's hurt Eli. I want... Her voice shook. I want to be the one who does it. Cassian studied her face for a long moment. Then, okay. Okay? If that's what you need, then we'll make it happen. You can't just, yes, I can. This is my world, Selene. This is what I do. If you want Riker Dane dead, I can make that happen. Cleanly, quietly, no trace. He'll disappear, and you'll never have to think about him again. Should have sounded wrong. Should have horrified her. Instead, it sounded like salvation. But, Cassian continued, once it's done, it's done. You don't get to take it back. You don't get to pretend your hands are clean. You'll carry that death for the rest of your life. I already carry Sarah's death. That wasn't your fault. This would be. Yes. And you need to decide if you can live with that. Selene looked at Eli. He was watching her with those serious dark eyes, and she realized he understood more than she'd given him credit for. Understood that they were talking about killing someone. Understood that his aunt was considering becoming exactly the kind of person she'd spent years running from. There has to be another way, she said. There is. We go to the warehouse, we set a trap, we take him alive and turn him over to the police with enough evidence to put him away for life. He'll talk his way out of it. Not if we make it impossible. Not if we have recordings of him confessing to murder. He's too smart for that. Everyone makes mistakes when they think they've won. Cassian's eyes glittered. We give him what he wants. Let him think you're coming alone. Let him think he's won. Then we take everything from him. That's too dangerous. More dangerous than letting him keep coming after you? More dangerous than running for the rest of your life? Selene's hands clenched. What if it goes wrong? Then I kill him anyway, and we deal with the consequences. It wasn't a plan. It was barely even a strategy. It was desperation dressed up as control. But it was the only option that didn't end with her walking into a warehouse alone or spending the rest of her life looking over her shoulder. Okay, she whispered. Okay? We do it your way. But if anything happens to Eli, nothing will happen to Eli. He stays here, behind every security measure I have. He doesn't leave this safe room until it's over. He'll be terrified. He'll be alive. Selene looked at Eli again. He was drawing on his sketch pad, pressed into the corner of the couch, trying to make himself small. She crossed to him, knelt down. Baby, I need you to stay here for a little while. Eli shook his head frantically. I know you're scared, but Cassian and I are going to fix this. We're going to make sure the bad man can't hurt us anymore. Eli grabbed her hand, wrote on his sketch pad, Don't go. I have to. Why? Because if I don't, he'll never stop. And I need you to be safe more than I need anything else in the world. Eli's eyes filled with tears. He wrote again. What if you don't come back? Selene's throat closed. She couldn't promise him she'd come back. Couldn't lie to him, not about this. Then Cassian will take care of you, she said quietly. He'll make sure you're okay, that you have everything you need, that you're loved. Eli looked past her at Cassian, who had crossed the room and now stood close enough to rest a hand on Selene's shoulder. I promise, Cassian said to Eli, whatever happens, you're mine, your family, and I protect family. Eli stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly, he nodded. Selene pulled him into a hug that felt too much like goodbye. 23 hours later, she stood in the warehouse district watching fog roll off the water and trying to remember why she'd agreed to this plan. Cassian's people had swept the location. No explosives, no traps, just empty warehouses and the smell of salt and rust and decay. Selene wore a wire so thin she could barely feel it against her skin. Cassian's men were positioned in 3 locations with clear sightlines to the main warehouse. Cassian himself was in a surveillance van 2 blocks away, monitoring everything. It should have felt safe. It felt like walking toward her own execution. You don't have to do this, Cassian's voice said in her ear. Selene touched the tiny earpiece. Yes, I do. We can still call it off, find another way. There is no other way. Silence. Then, I'm right here. The second anything goes wrong, I'm coming in. I know. Selene, don't say anything that sounds like goodbye. Wasn't planning on it. I was going to say you're the strongest person I've ever met. Despite everything, Selene felt a ghost of a smile. You need to meet more people. Probably. Her phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Pier 47, Warehouse 3, alone. "I've got movement," one of Cassian's men said through the comms. "Single vehicle, black sedan. Looks like he's alone." "Copy," Cassian said. "Selene, you're clear to approach." She walked toward Warehouse 3 on legs that felt disconnected from her body. Every step echoed. The door was already open, spilling sickly yellow light onto cracked concrete. Inside, Riker waited. He looked different than she remembered. Thinner, harder. His eyes had that fevered quality that came from obsession feeding on itself until there was nothing else left. "Selene," he smiled. "You came. You didn't leave me much choice." "There's always a choice. You just finally made the right one." "Where's Eli? I told you to bring him. And I told you to go to hell. He's not coming anywhere near you." Riker's smile faded. That wasn't part of the deal. "The deal was I show up. I'm here." "Not good enough." "Then we've got a problem." Riker pulled out a phone, showed her the screen. Live feed of the estate, focused on the safe room door. "My finger's on the button," he said. "One click and everyone in that house dies." Selene's heart stopped. "You said no explosives." "I said I placed charges. I never said when. Your boyfriend's good, but he's not that good. The devices were planted 8 weeks ago before you ever showed up. They've been sitting dormant, waiting for activation. You're lying. Am I? Want to test that theory?" Through the earpiece, Cassian's voice. "He's bluffing. Has to be. We checked." "Not well enough." Riker tilted his head. "I can hear him, by the way. The wire you're wearing isn't as subtle as you think." Selene's blood went cold. Riker crossed the space between them in 3 strides, grabbed her by the throat exactly like he had in the alley months ago. But this time, there was no Cassian to interrupt. No rescue coming. "You thought you could outsmart me?" Riker hissed. "Thought you could set a trap? I've been planning this since the day you ran. Every move calculated, every contingency covered." "Let her go," Cassian's voice through the earpiece, tight with barely controlled rage. "Come stop me," Riker said toward Selene's throat, knowing Cassian could hear. "But remember, my finger's still on the button. You breach this warehouse, everyone at your estate dies, including that broken little boy Selene loves so much." "Don't," Cassian started. "Your choice. Save her or save him. You can't do both." The world narrowed to that single moment, Riker's hand on her throat, the phone in his other hand. And somewhere across the city, Eli sitting in a safe room that might not be safe at all. "Choose," Riker whispered. And Selene realized with perfect, terrible clarity that there was only one way this ended. She grabbed Riker's wrist. Not to pull it away, to keep it exactly where it was. "Do it," she said. Riker blinked. "What?" "Press the button. Blow up the house. Kill Cassian. Kill everyone." She met his eyes. "But you'll have to do it while looking at me. You'll have to watch me die knowing it was your hand that killed me. Not indirectly like Sarah. Not through a car crash you could pretend was an accident. You'll have to own it." "You think I won't?" "I think you're a coward who only knows how to hurt people when they can't fight back. Prove me wrong." Riker's hand tightened on her throat. His thumb found the wire, ripped it free. The earpiece went silent. "You're right," he said quietly. "I am a coward. But you know what? I don't care anymore." His finger moved toward the phone screen, and Selene drove her knee into his groin with everything she had. Riker doubled over. The phone flew from his hand, skittered across the concrete floor. Selene dove for it, fingers closing around cold metal. Riker grabbed her ankle, yanked her back. She hit the ground hard, tasted blood. He was on top of her in seconds, hands finding her throat again, squeezing. "You stupid bitch," he spat. "You could have had everything, could have been safe, and you chose this." Selene's vision started to tunnel. She clawed at his hands, his face, anything she could reach. Her lungs burned. Her heartbeat roared in her ears. This was it. This was how she died. Then the warehouse door exploded inward. Cassian came through like a force of nature, flanked by armed men, and the look on his face would haunt Selene's dreams for years. Pure rage mixed with terror, mixed with something primal and uncontrolled. "Get away from her." Riker didn't move fast enough. Cassian's first punch broke Riker's jaw. The second shattered his nose. By the third, Riker was on the ground, blood pooling under his face, and Cassian showed no signs of stopping. Cassian, Selene gasped. Stop. You'll kill him. Good. You'll go to prison. Don't care. Eli needs you. That stopped him. Cassian's fist hung in the air, trembling with the effort of not following through. Blood dripped from his knuckles. Riker groaned beneath him. He needs you, Selene repeated. We both do. Slowly, Cassian lowered his hand, stood, stepped away from Riker's broken body. His men moved in immediately, securing Riker with zip ties and efficiency that spoke of years of practice. Cassian crossed to Selene, helped her sit up. His hands shook as they checked her throat, her face, looking for serious damage. I'm okay, she whispered. You're not. I will be. He was going to kill you. But he didn't. Because I almost murdered him in front of witnesses. But you didn't. Cassian's laugh came out ragged. You keep stopping me from doing terrible things. Someone has to. He pulled her against his chest, and she felt his heart hammering fast enough to match hers. They sat there on the cold warehouse floor, surrounded by armed men and blood and the broken remains of the monster who'd stolen so much from her, and Selene finally let herself believe it was over. Then one of Cassian's men called out, Sir, we've got a problem. Cassian was on his feet instantly. What? The phone. We checked it. The feed. The man's face went pale. It's real. There are charges at the estate, 3 of them, and they're active. The warehouse went silent. How long? Cassian asked. The man looked at the phone timer. 6 minutes. Selene's world tilted. Eli. We have people at the estate, Cassian started. They won't get him out in time. The safe room is reinforced, not against 3 bombs. They stared at each other. 6 minutes, maybe 5 now. Not enough time to drive there, not enough time to evacuate, not enough time to... Selene grabbed the phone from Cassian's man, looked at the screen. The detonation interface was simple. 3 buttons, 3 locations, 1 timer, and a cancel code. He has to tell us the code, she said. Everyone turned to look at Riker. He was conscious now, blood streaming from his broken face, but smiling through it. Smiling like he'd already won. No, he said. Tell us the code, Cassian said quietly. No. I'll make you. You don't have time to torture it out of me, and even if you did... Riker's smile widened. I'd rather die than give it to you. 4 minutes. Please, Selene said. He's 9 years old. He's never hurt anyone. Please. Should have thought of that before you chose Moreau over me. 3 minutes. Cassian pulled his gun, pressed it against Riker's temple. Last chance. Pull the trigger. I'm dead either way. And Selene realized he was right. Riker had planned this as a murder-suicide from the beginning, had always intended to die here, taking everything she loved with him. 2 minutes. Call the estate, Cassian snapped at Marcus. Get everyone out. Now. Already doing it, Marcus said, phone pressed to his ear. But the safe room won't open without your authorization. Then authorize it. The system's been overridden. Someone locked it remotely. They all looked at Riker again. Remote trigger, he said. Tied to my heartbeat. System unlocks when I'm dead. Then you're useful after all, Cassian said, and pulled the trigger. The gunshot echoed through the warehouse. Riker's body slumped. Blood spread. And Selene couldn't feel anything except hope that it was enough, that the system would unlock in time, that Eli would... Marcus's phone rang. He answered, listened. His face shifted from terror to relief. Safe room's open. They're evacuating everyone. Bomb squad's on site. How long? Cassian demanded. 90 seconds. 1 minute. They waited. Selene counted every heartbeat, counted every breath, counted down toward either salvation or devastation. 30 seconds. Marcus's phone rang again. He answered. Everyone held their breath. Bombs are disarmed, Marcus said. Everyone's safe. Eli's safe. Selene collapsed, just fell to her knees right there on the bloody warehouse floor and couldn't get back up. Cassian caught her, held her, and she realized he was shaking as badly as she was. It's over, he whispered. It's actually over. But as they sat there, surrounded by death and the aftermath of violence, As sirens started wailing in the distance, and Cassian's men started the grim work of cleaning up, Selene realized something that made her blood run cold. She'd won, but the cost of winning had turned her into exactly what she'd feared: someone who'd chosen violence, someone who'd stood by while Cassian murdered a man in cold blood, someone who'd let it happen because she'd wanted it to happen. The monster was dead, but maybe she'd become one too. The police arrived 14 minutes after Riker's body stopped bleeding. Selene sat in the back of the surveillance van, wrapped in a blanket she didn't remember accepting, watching detectives swarm the warehouse like ants finding sugar. Red and blue lights painted the fog in sickening colors. Someone had given her water. She couldn't drink it. Her throat still felt like Riker's hands were wrapped around it even though he was dead, even though she'd watched Cassian put a bullet in his brain. Cassian stood outside talking to a detective whose face said he'd seen this movie before and didn't like the ending. Marcus hovered nearby, phone pressed to his ear, coordinating something Selene couldn't track. The words came at her through cotton: self-defense, justifiable homicide, threatening a minor, explosives, documented stalking history. None of it mattered. Riker was dead, and Selene couldn't feel anything except the cold. Miss Vale, a woman appeared in the van doorway. Detective shield clipped to her belt, kind eyes that had seen too much. "I'm Detective Chen. I need to ask you some questions." Selene nodded because speaking felt impossible. "Can you walk me through what happened tonight?" "He was going to kill my nephew." The words came out flat, mechanical. "He had bombs at the estate. He was going to kill everyone if we didn't. Take your time." But there was no time. There had never been enough time. That was the problem. Time had run out the second Riker decided her sister was an obstacle. Time had run out when Selene called Cassian instead of the police. Time had run out when she'd stood in that warehouse and told Riker to do it, press the button, kill everyone. Because at least then she'd be looking him in the eyes when he finally showed the monster underneath. "He killed my sister," Selene said, 3 years ago. "Made it look like an accident. He told me tonight, confessed." Detective Chen's expression shifted. "Did you record that confession?" The wire stopped working. He found it, destroyed it. "So there's no recording?" "No. And the only other witness to that confession is dead." Selene looked at the detective, really looked at her, saw the calculation happening behind those kind eyes. The math that said without proof, without witnesses, without anything except a dead body, and a story that sounded convenient. This whole thing looked very different. "I'm not lying," Selene said. "I didn't say you were. But you need to understand how this looks." "How does it look?" "Like a woman who married a crime lord 4 weeks ago, claimed her ex-fiancé was stalking her, and got that crime lord to kill him." Detective Chen's voice stayed gentle, professional. "I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm saying that's what a prosecutor might say. He had bombs. At the estate. Your people found them. We found 3 improvised explosive devices, yes, disabled now. But there's no proof Riker Dane planted them. Who else would have? I don't know. Maybe someone who wanted an excuse to kill Mr. Dane without legal consequences." The implication hit like cold water. Selene stood up so fast the blanket fell. "You think Cassian planted those bombs himself?" "I think it's a possibility we have to investigate." "That's insane. He was at the estate when—" Selene stopped, tried to remember. When had the bombs been planted? Riker said 8 weeks ago, before she and Eli arrived. But could she prove that? Could anyone? "Miss Vale, I need you to be very honest with me right now. Did Cassian Moreau ever suggest killing Riker Dane as a solution to your problem?" "He offered to protect us." "That's not what I asked." Selene's hands clenched. "He said he could make Riker disappear, but he didn't. He was trying to help by committing murder, by stopping a murderer. That's not how the law works." "Then maybe the law doesn't work at all." Detective Chen studied her face. "You're in love with him." "That's not—" "It's obvious. The way you're defending him. The way you're spiraling because you think I'm accusing him of something." The detective's voice softened. "I've seen this before. Abused women who escape one dangerous man and fall straight into the arms of another because danger feels like home. Cassian isn't. He's a documented crime lord, Miss Vale. Suspected of murder, racketeering, extortion, human trafficking. Human trafficking? That's not, he doesn't, how do you know? You've known him 4 weeks. 4 weeks is barely enough time to know someone's favorite color, let alone whether they're trafficking people. Selene's vision blurred. From tears or rage, she couldn't tell. He saved my life. He saved Eli's life. Or he killed the only person who could connect him to crimes we can't prove. Convenient that Riker Dane is dead and can't testify to anything. Testify to what? What crimes? Detective Chen pulled out a folder, opened it. Photos spilled across the van's table. Selene recognized some of them. The surveillance equipment from Riker's apartment. The pictures of her and Eli and Cassian. But there were others. Documents, bank transfers, names she didn't recognize. We found this in Riker Dane's apartment, Detective Chen said. Evidence that someone was paying him. Significant amounts. Wire transfers going back 3 months. Selena's breath stopped. Paying him for what? We don't know. But the account is registered to a shell corporation owned by Victor Krauss. The name rang bells. The man from the dinner party. The one who'd looked at Eli like a weakness. The one who'd asked too many questions. I don't understand, Selene said. Neither do we. But it suggests your ex-fiancé wasn't acting alone. That he might have been working for Cassian's rivals. That this whole thing might be bigger than a simple stalking case. The world tilted. Selene grabbed the table edge to steady herself. You're saying someone paid Riker to come after us? I'm saying it's possible, which means either Cassian knew and didn't tell you, or he didn't know and isn't as in control as he pretends to be. Either way, Detective Chen closed the folder. You and your nephew are in danger. From who? That's what we need to figure out. Outside the van, Cassian's voice rose in sharp anger. Selene couldn't hear the words, but she heard the tone. Controlled fury, barely leashed. She'd heard that tone before, right before he'd killed Riker. I need to talk to him, Selene said. That's not a good idea right now. I don't care. Miss Vale, I'm trying to help you, but I need you to understand that Cassian Moreau is dangerous. Whatever you think you feel for him, whatever life you think you're building together, it's not real. Men like him don't change. They just get better at hiding what they are. You don't know him. I know his file. I know the bodies. I know the families destroyed by his business interests. And I know that 4 weeks ago you were a waitress trying to protect your nephew, and now you're married to one of the most dangerous men in New York and standing in a crime scene where your ex-fiancé was executed. Detective Chen leaned forward. Does that sound like someone who's helping you or someone who's using you? Selene wanted to argue, wanted to defend Cassian, wanted to scream that it wasn't like that he was different, that what they had was real. But doubt had already taken root. Because Detective Chen was right about one thing. Selene had known Cassian for 4 weeks. 4 weeks of luxury and protection and carefully controlled interactions. 4 weeks of him showing her exactly what he wanted her to see. And tonight, she'd watched him kill a man without hesitation, without remorse, with the kind of practiced ease that came from doing it before. How many times before? How many bodies? How much blood on those hands that had held her face so gently, that had taught Eli to draw, that had promised safety? I need to see my nephew, Selene said quietly. Of course. We'll arrange transport back to the estate. No. The word came out sharp, final. Not the estate. Somewhere else, somewhere safe. You think the estate isn't safe? I don't know what's safe anymore. Detective Chen nodded slowly. We can arrange protective custody, you and Eli, until we sort out what's really happening here. Protective custody means what? A safe house? Yes. For how long? However long it takes. Which could be weeks, months, years. Hidden away with Eli in some anonymous apartment with cops watching their every move, waiting for the next threat to materialize, never knowing if they were safe or just frozen in the moment before the next disaster. That wasn't living. That was just a different kind of prison. I need to think, Selene said. Take your time. But Miss Vale... Detective Chen stood, started to leave, then paused. Whatever you decide, be careful. Cassian Moreau doesn't let go of things he considers his, and from what I've seen tonight, he considers you and that boy his property. Then she was gone, leaving Selene alone with photographs of wire transfers and shell corporations and questions that didn't have good answers. The van door opened again, this time Cassian. He looked exhausted, blood still on his knuckles, shirt untucked, hair falling into those ice-blue eyes that right now looked more gray than blue. The color of storms, of violence, of things that destroyed everything in their path. He sat down across from her without asking permission. "How are you?" he asked. "I don't know. The police want to separate us, put you and Eli in protective custody." "I know, Detective Chen told me." "Are you going to do it?" The question hung between them. Selene looked at his face, trying to see past the exhaustion to what was underneath. Trying to figure out if she was looking at her savior or just another monster wearing a better mask. "Did you know?" she asked. "Know what?" "That someone was paying Riker, that this was bigger than just him being obsessed." Cassian went very still. "How did you—" "The police found bank records, wire transfers from Victor Krause's Shell Corporation." "Christ!" Cassian scrubbed his hands over his face. "I didn't know. I suspected something was off, but I didn't—" He stopped. Started again. "Victor's been trying to weaken my position for years, attacking rivals, destabilizing alliances. I thought tonight was about you. I didn't realize it was about me. So I was just collateral damage? Bait to get to you?" "No, you were—" He struggled for words. "I think Riker's obsession was real, but someone saw an opportunity to weaponize it, to use him to get to me through you." "That's not better. That's worse." "I know. Because it means this isn't over. Victor's still out there, still targeting you, which means targeting us. I'll handle Victor." "How? By killing him too?" Cassian's jaw clenched. "If necessary." "And the next one? And the one after that? How many people are you going to kill to keep us safe? However many it takes. That's not a life. That's—" Selene's voice cracked. "That's exactly what Detective Chen said. That you're dangerous. That I've traded one abuser for another. I'm not Riker. No, you're worse. Because at least with Riker, I knew what he was from the start. You made me believe—" She stopped, couldn't finish. "Made you believe what? That this could be real, that we could be a family, that Eli could grow up safe and normal and not surrounded by violence." The tears came and Selene couldn't stop them. "But tonight proved that was a fantasy. You killed a man right in front of me, didn't hesitate, didn't even blink. And I realized I don't know you at all." Cassian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. "You're right. You don't know me. You know the version of me I showed you because that's the version I wanted to be around you. But I've done terrible things, Selene. Things I can't take back. Things I won't apologize for because they kept me alive and kept my people safe. Your people, not us. You are my people now. For how long? Until we become inconvenient? Until keeping us safe threatens your empire? That won't happen. You can't promise that." "Yes, I can. Because I love you. Because Eli is my son in every way that matters. Because I would burn my entire empire to the ground before I let anything happen to either of you." The words should have felt romantic. Instead, they felt like a threat. "Love isn't supposed to be violent," Selene whispered. "In my world, it is. Love is the most violent thing that exists because it's the only thing worth killing for." Cassian leaned forward. "I understand if you can't accept that. I understand if you take Eli and disappear into protective custody and never look back. But I need you to understand something too." "What?" "That I will never stop protecting you, whether you're with me or not, whether you love me or hate me, whether you're in my house or in some government safe house halfway across the country." His voice dropped. "You're mine. Eli's mine. And no one, not Victor, not the police, not anyone, is taking that away from me." Selene stared at him, at the possessiveness in his eyes, at the obsession that looked disturbingly like Riker's but dressed in better clothes and backed by more power. "That's not love," she said quietly. "That's ownership." "Maybe, but it's the only kind I know how to give." The honesty of it was somehow worse than any lie could have been, because Cassian truly didn't see the difference, didn't understand that love wasn't supposed to feel like chains, even when those chains were made of gold. "I need time," Selene said. "How much?" "I don't know. We don't have the luxury of time. Victor knows you and Eli exist now, knows you're my weakness. He'll come after you whether you're with me or not. Then maybe Eli and I should disappear. Really disappear this time. New names, new city, start over where no one can find us. You tried that before. It didn't work. Because I didn't go far enough. Didn't cut all ties. But this time Victor has resources Riker never dreamed of. He owns officials, judges, cops. He could find you anywhere in the country if he wanted to. Then what do you suggest? Cassian's eyes glittered. I suggest we end this. Tonight. Victor and I have been dancing around each other for years. Time to stop dancing. You want to go to war. I want to eliminate the threat before it eliminates us. By killing Victor. Yes. And whoever works for him. And whoever gets in the way. Selene shook her head. That's not a solution. That's escalation. It's the only language men like Victor understand. Then maybe I don't want to be part of a world where that's the only language. Cassian stood, paced the small confines of the van like a caged animal. You think the legitimate world is any different? You think corporate boardrooms and government offices aren't full of people destroying each other for power? The only difference is they use lawyers and regulations instead of guns. The violence is still there. It's just better hidden. That's not... It's exactly true and you know it. You've seen it. Your sister was killed by a man who knew how to hide behind the law, who knew how to make murder look like an accident because the system protects predators as long as they're subtle about it. He stopped pacing, looked at her. I'm not subtle. I'm not hidden. But at least with me, you know exactly what you're getting. A killer. A protector who's willing to kill. There's a difference. Not to the people who end up dead. No. But there is to the people who stay alive because of it. Selene wanted to argue, wanted to find the flaw in his logic. Couldn't. Because he was right. The legitimate world hadn't protected her sister. Hadn't protected her, hadn't protected Eli. It had been Cassian who'd stepped in when the system failed. Cassian who'd made Riker back down with threats the police could never make. Cassian who'd given them safety that restraining orders and police reports never could. But at what cost? I can't do this right now, Selene said. I can't think, can't process. I need to see Eli. Need to hold him and make sure he's okay before I make any decisions. Of course, Cassian pulled out his phone. Marcus will drive you to the estate. I'll stay here and handle the police. Alone? I've done this before. Right, because he'd killed people before. Had practiced talking his way out of murder charges. The thought made Selene's stomach turn. She stood on shaky legs and moved toward the van door. Cassian caught her wrist gently. Whatever you decide, he said quietly. I meant what I said. You and Eli are mine. I'll protect you whether you want me to or not. That's not comforting. It wasn't meant to be comforting. It was meant to be true. He let her go. The drive back to the estate took 27 minutes that felt like 27 hours. Selene sat in the back of the sedan with Marcus driving and 2 armed guards flanking them and tried not to think about bombs or blood or the way Cassian's finger had looked on that trigger right before he'd ended a life without hesitation. The estate looked different now. Less like a sanctuary and more like a fortress under siege. Every light was on. Armed men patrolled in pairs. The gates stayed closed until Marcus pulled up, then opened just wide enough for them to slip through before slamming shut again. Rosa met Selene at the door, face drawn with worry. Where's Eli? Selene asked. Still in the safe room. He won't come out. Won't let anyone near him except... She hesitated. Except you or Mr. Moreau. Selene ran. Down the stairs. Through corridors she'd memorized in 4 weeks of living here. To the reinforced door that had almost become Eli's tomb. It stood open now. Inside, Eli sat in the same corner where she'd left him hours ago, knees pulled to his chest, face buried, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Baby, Selene breathed. Eli's head snapped up. When he saw her, he launched himself across the room and into her arms with such force they both almost fell. He clung to her like she might disappear, like she might be a dream, like letting go meant losing her forever. I'm here, Selene whispered. I'm okay. We're okay. But Eli shook his head frantically, grabbed his sketch pad from where it had fallen, wrote in shaking letters, You left me. I had to. I had to stop the bad man, You left me alone. Rosa was here. The guards were here. Not you. The words hit harder than any physical blow could have. Because he was right. She'd left him, locked him in a room and walked into danger, and left him to wait and wonder if she'd come back or if he'd lose her the way he'd lost everyone else he'd ever loved. I'm sorry, Selene whispered. I'm so sorry, Eli. I thought I was protecting you. He wrote again, letters getting bigger, more frantic. What if you died? I didn't. What if you died like Mom? Like Dad? What if you left me alone forever? Selene pulled him closer, felt his whole body shaking, and realized she'd been so focused on keeping him physically safe that she'd forgotten he'd already lost everyone. That to him, her leaving, even for good reasons, even to protect him, felt like abandonment, felt like death. I won't leave you, she said. Never again. I promise. Liar. The word cut deep. Because he was right. She'd already left him once tonight. What was to stop her from doing it again? What was to stop the next crisis from pulling her away? What was to stop the violence that followed Cassian from eventually swallowing them all? I'm not lying, Selene said. I'm here now. I'm staying. Where? Here. I don't know yet. Eli pulled back, looked at her with those dark, serious eyes that had seen too much. Then he wrote very carefully, I want to stay. Selene's breath caught. With Cassian? Yes. Baby, it's not that simple. I like it here. I like him. I want to stay. He's dangerous. Tonight you almost... Not his fault. Bad man's fault. But there will be other bad men. There will always be other bad men because of what Cassian does. Don't care. Eli. I feel safe here. With him. With you. That's all I want. Selene stared at the words. At the simple clarity of what Eli needed. Not perfection, not a world without danger. Just a place where he felt safe. A place with people who loved him. A place that felt like home even when the rest of the world was falling apart. You feel safe with Cassian? She asked quietly. Eli nodded. Even knowing what he does? What he is? Another nod. Then Eli wrote, He protects us, like Dad did. The comparison made Selene's throat close. Eli's father had been a good man, a firefighter who died saving people from a burning building while his wife drove their son to safety. A hero. Comparing him to Cassian Moreau, a criminal, a killer, a man who solved problems with violence, should have been insulting. But Eli wasn't wrong, because protection was protection, whether it came from running into burning buildings or putting bullets in threats. And Cassian had protected them. Had given Eli a home and safety, and the first real smile Selene had seen on his face in 3 years. Did it matter how that safety was achieved, if the result was a traumatized child finally healing? Selene didn't know. Didn't know if loving someone dangerous was the same as being in danger. Didn't know if accepting Cassian's protection meant accepting his violence. Didn't know if she could build a life on a foundation of bodies and blood and decisions made in dark warehouses. But she knew Eli had already decided, and she knew that ripping him away from the first stability he'd found in years would break him all over again. Okay, she whispered. Eli's eyes widened. Okay, we'll stay. For now. Until we figure out what's happening with Victor, and... She stopped. Tried again. Until we're sure it's safe. Eli threw his arms around her neck and squeezed hard enough to hurt. Selene held him and tried not to think about Detective Chen's warning, tried not to think about the way Cassian had said, "You're mine," like it was a statement of fact instead of a hope. Tried not to think about how many more people might die before this was really over. The sound of footsteps made them both look up. Cassian stood in the doorway. He looked different than he had in the van, more controlled, more carefully blank, like he'd put his mask back on for the trip home. But his eyes went straight to Eli, and something in them softened. Hey, he said quietly. Eli extracted himself from Selene's arms and ran to Cassian. Actually ran. Cassian caught him, lifted him up even though Eli was really too old to be carried, and held on like the kid weighed nothing. You okay? Cassian asked. Eli nodded against his shoulder. Scared? Another nod. Me too. Eli pulled back, looked at Cassian's face like he was trying to figure out if that was true or just something adults said. I was terrified, Cassian said. Thought I might lose both of you. Worst feeling I've ever had. Eli's eyes welled with tears. He pressed his forehead against Cassian's, and they stood there like that, not saying anything, just breathing together while Selene watched and tried to reconcile the man holding her nephew so gently with the man who'd executed someone 4 hours ago. The police want us to leave, Selene said finally. Cassian's eyes found hers over Eli's head. Are you going to? Eli wants to stay. What do you want? That was the question, wasn't it? What did Selene want? Safety that came at the cost of violence? Love that felt like possession? A life where every day might bring new threats, but at least they'd face them together? I want to know we're not making a mistake, she said. I can't promise that. I know. I can promise I'll do everything in my power to keep you safe, to keep Eli safe, to end this thing with Victor before it escalates further, by killing him. Yes. And I'm supposed to just accept that? Just let you start a war? The war's already started. Victor started it when he paid Riker to come after you. I'm just finishing it. Eli had gone still in Cassian's arms, listening even though he couldn't contribute. Selene saw the moment he understood what they were talking about, saw his small face go serious, saw him look between the adults trying to figure out which side to take. Then Eli did something that changed everything. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, his drawing from earlier, the one with 3 people standing together under the sun. He unfolded it carefully and held it up so both adults could see. The message was clear. This is what I want, us, together. Cassian's throat worked. Me too, kid. Me too. He looked at Selene, waiting, not pushing, just waiting for her to decide whether they were doing this, really doing this, committing to a life that meant accepting violence as the price of safety, accepting possession as the vocabulary of love, accepting that the man standing in front of her was both her greatest protection and her greatest danger. Selene thought about her sister, about the crash that wasn't a crash, about 3 years of carrying guilt that had never been hers to carry, about Riker's hands on her throat in that alley and how close she'd come to dying before Cassian stepped out of the darkness. She thought about 4 weeks of breakfast together and gym sessions, and watching Eli slowly come back to life in a house that felt more like home than anywhere she'd lived since childhood. She thought about the kiss, about Cassian's confession, about the way he'd looked at her in the warehouse before everything went wrong, and how that look had made her feel seen in a way that was terrifying and exhilarating and completely new. She thought about protective custody, about running again, about starting over in some anonymous city with new names and no history, and always looking over her shoulder waiting for the next threat. And she realized she was tired of running, tired of being scared, tired of pretending she didn't know exactly what she wanted, even if wanting it meant accepting things about herself she'd rather not face. Okay, she said quietly. Okay? Cassian's voice was carefully neutral. Okay, we stay. Okay, you handle Victor. Okay, we try this. She gestured between them. Whatever this is. But she held up a hand when relief started to flood his face. But you don't lie to me. Ever. About the danger. About what you're doing. About what's coming. I need to know what I'm walking into. What Eli's walking into. I can do that. And if it gets too dangerous, if staying here means putting Eli in the line of fire, then we'll deal with it. Together. Promise me. I promise. Selene studied his face, looking for cracks, for lies, for anything that said this was another trap dressed up as salvation. Found nothing except exhaustion and sincerity, and something that might actually be love, if she was willing to accept that love could wear this face. Then we stay, she said. Cassian set Eli down carefully, crossed to Selene in 3 strides, pulled her up and kissed her hard enough to bruise, desperate enough to feel like drowning, gentle enough at the edges that she remembered why she'd fallen in the first place. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Cassian pressed his forehead against hers. I won't let anything happen to you, he whispered. You can't promise that. Watch me. They stood there in the safe room that had almost been a tomb, with Eli watching them and guards outside the door and the weight of impossible promises hanging in the air, and Selene finally accepted that this was her life now. Danger and protection intertwined so completely she couldn't separate them. Love and possession speaking the same language. Safety bought with violence and defended with blood. It wasn't what she'd wanted, but maybe it was what she needed. The next 72 hours moved like a countdown to war. Cassian barely slept. Selene would wake at 3 a.m. to find his side of the bed empty. When had it become his side? When had she stopped sleeping in the guest suite? And find him in his office surrounded by maps and files and men whose faces promised violence. They were planning something. She didn't ask what. Didn't want to know the details of how you dismantle a rival's empire piece by piece until there's nothing left but rubble and bodies. On the second day, Victor made his move. Not against Cassian directly. That would have been too obvious. Instead, 3 of Cassian's legitimate businesses burned within an hour of each other. Restaurants, a nightclub, a warehouse supposedly storing legal imports. All gone. Millions in damage. Dozens of employees suddenly without jobs. The message was clear. I can reach you anywhere. Cassian's response was immediate and surgical. By dawn, 2 of Victor's key lieutenants had disappeared. By noon, 4 of his supply lines had been intercepted and seized. By sunset, 3 of his front companies had been raided by federal agents who'd suddenly developed a passionate interest in Victor's tax records. This was what war looked like when fought by men who owned the shadows. No armies, no declarations, just carefully orchestrated devastation wrapped in plausible deniability. And through it all, Eli drew. He set up his sketchpad in the corner of Cassian's office and drew while the men planned. Drew families and houses and gardens. Drew worlds where nothing burned and nobody died and children could grow up without learning what gunfire sounded like. Selene watched him draw and wondered if he understood what was happening or if this was his way of escaping it. On the third day, Cassian called a meeting, his office filled with men Selene didn't recognize. Hard faces, expensive suits, the kind of people who made decisions that ended with chalk outlines. She should have left, should have taken Eli somewhere he couldn't hear, but Cassian had caught her eye and made a small gesture. Stay. So she stayed, and learned exactly how deep the rot went. Victor wasn't working alone. He'd built an alliance, 3 families, all with grievances against Cassian, all willing to set aside old hatreds if it meant taking down the man who dominated New York's underground for the past decade. They're planning a coordinated strike, one of Cassian's men said. Name Selene didn't catch. Saturday night, multiple locations. They want to hit everything at once, your holdings, your people, your family. Selene's blood went cold. Family? Cassian's jaw clenched. They don't have the balls. They do if they're desperate enough, and they are. You've been choking their operations for 3 days. They're bleeding money and respect. They'll do whatever it takes to even the score. Then we hit them first. When? Cassian's eyes found Selene's, held them for a long moment. Then, tonight. The room erupted in motion, men pulling out phones, checking weapons, coordinating logistics with the efficiency of people who'd done this before. Many times before. Selene stood frozen in the doorway, realizing what she was about to become complicit in. A massacre, not self-defense, not protection. An offensive strike designed to eliminate threats before they could materialize. Murder disguised as strategy. Wait, she said. Everyone stopped. There has to be another way. There isn't, Cassian said quietly. You haven't tried negotiating. You can't negotiate with people who want you dead. You can only kill them first or let them kill you. Those are the options. That's not... There's always another option. Name it. Selene opened her mouth, closed it, because she couldn't name it. Couldn't think of a single solution that didn't end with someone dying. I didn't think so, Cassian said, not unkindly. He turned back to his men. We move at midnight. 3 teams. Simultaneous hits, no witnesses, no mercy. We end this tonight. The men nodded, filed out, left Selene standing there with the weight of what she'd just agreed to by staying silent, pressing down on her chest like a stone. You should take Eli upstairs, Cassian said when they were alone. You're really doing this? Yes. And nothing I say will stop you. Would you want me to stop? Knowing they're planning to target us? Knowing that if I don't move first, we might all die? Selene had no answer, because he was right. Because sometimes the only choice was between violence now or violence later. Because the world he lived in, the world she'd chosen to stay in, didn't have clean solutions. "I hate this," she whispered. "I know. I hate that this is our life now. I know. I hate that I can't even argue with you because you're right." Cassian crossed to her, tilted her chin up so she had to look at him. "You can still leave. Take Eli. Disappear. I'll make sure you're protected from a distance. You don't have to be here for this." "Yes, I do." "Why?" "Because if I leave now, I'm a coward, and I'm tired of being a coward." She met his eyes. "I'm staying, but I need you to promise me something. Anything. That you'll come back. That you won't die doing this. That I won't have to explain to Eli why another person he loves is gone." Cassian's expression softened. "I promise." "You can't know that. I can. Because I have too much to lose now. And that makes me more dangerous than I've ever been." He kissed her forehead. "Trust me." "I'm trying." "Try harder." Then he was gone, swept up in preparation and planning, leaving Selene alone with her choices and her conscience and the growing certainty that everything was about to change. Midnight came too fast. Selene sat in the master bedroom with Eli curled against her side, pretending to sleep, while below them men loaded weapons and reviewed targets and prepared to commit murder in her name. In their name. Because this war had started with her, with Riker. With Victor seeing weakness he could exploit, and now people were going to die to protect that weakness. The door opened. Cassian appeared, dressed in all black, no weapons visible, but Selene knew they were there. Hidden, ready. "I'm leaving," he said quietly. Selene stood carefully, not wanting to wake Eli. Crossed to Cassian, searched his face for fear or doubt, or anything human underneath the controlled determination. Found nothing. "How long?" she asked. 3 hours. Maybe 4. And if something goes wrong, it won't. But if it does, then Marcus has instructions. He'll get you and Eli out. New identities, new life. You'll be safe. "I don't want a new life. I want this one. With you in it." Something cracked in Cassian's expression. "Then I better not die." "That's not funny." "Wasn't meant to be." Selene grabbed his shirt, pulled him down. Kissed him like it might be the last time because it might be. Because men who went to war sometimes didn't come home. Because the universe didn't care about promises or plans or how much she'd finally admitted she loved him. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Cassian rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said. "Don't say it like goodbye." "I'm not. I'm saying it like a promise. I love you. I'm coming back. And when I do, this will be over. Really over. No more threats, no more running, just us. You can't promise that. Watch me." Then he was gone. Selene stood at the window and watched the cars pull out of the driveway, one after another, filled with men going to commit violence in the dark. Watched until the taillights disappeared into the night. Watched until there was nothing left to see except her own reflection in the glass. A woman who'd come to this house 4 weeks ago running from a monster and stayed to love a different one. Behind her, Eli stirred. "He'll come back," she said quietly. To Eli. To herself. To whatever force controlled fate and decided who lived and who died when good men did terrible things. But she didn't believe it. Didn't believe anything except that the next few hours would determine whether she'd made the right choice or condemned everyone she loved to death. The waiting was torture. Selene paced the bedroom while Eli watched with worried eyes. Checked her phone every 30 seconds, even though Cassian had said no contact during the operation. Listened for sounds that never came. Gunfire, sirens, anything to indicate what was happening out there in the dark. 2 hours passed. 3. 3.5. At 4 hours and 17 minutes, headlights appeared in the drive. Selene's heart stopped. She ran to the window, pressed her face against the glass, trying to count vehicles. Were they all back? Was anyone missing? Had someone... The cars parked. Doors opened. Men stepped out. And there, in the middle of them, moving like exhaustion personified but alive, was Cassian. Selene started crying before she realized it. Relief so intense it felt like drowning. She wanted to run downstairs, wanted to throw herself at him, wanted to check for injuries and scream at him for scaring her and kiss him until neither of them could breathe. but Eli was watching. So instead, she took a shaky breath and said, "He's home." Eli scrambled off the bed and ran for the door. Selene followed at a slower pace, trying to get herself under control, trying to put her face back together before she saw Cassian and fell apart all over again. They met him in the main hall. Eli launched himself at Cassian without hesitation. Cassian caught him, lifted him up, held on tight, while his eyes found Selene's over the boy's head. He looked like hell, exhausted, blood on his shirt. Not his. She prayed not his. Face drawn, eyes hollow. This was the cost, she realized, the weight he carried, the price of being the monster who protected them from other monsters. "It's done," he said quietly. "Victor?" "Gone. His lieutenants, his allies, all of them." Cassian's voice was flat, empty. "It's over." Selene should have felt relief, should have felt grateful, should have felt safe. Instead, she just felt numb. Because it wasn't over. It would never be over. There would always be another Victor, another threat, another reason for Cassian to load weapons and disappear into the night and come back covered in blood that wasn't his. This was their life now. This was what she'd chosen. And as Cassian set Eli down and crossed to pull her into an embrace that felt more like collapse than celebration, Selene finally understood what it meant to love someone dangerous. It meant living with the constant terror of losing them. It meant accepting that safety and violence were two sides of the same coin. It meant choosing, every single day, to stay, despite knowing that any day could be the one where everything fell apart. "I'm here," Cassian whispered against her hair. "We're safe. It's really over." Selene held him tighter and didn't correct him, because she knew better, knew that in Cassian's world nothing was ever really over. It just paused until the next war began. Dawn came cold and gray, the kind of morning that made New York look washed out and tired. Selene stood at the bedroom window, watching frost melt on bare branches while Cassian slept behind her, the first real sleep he'd had in 4 days. His breathing was deep and even, the kind that came after exhaustion finally won against adrenaline. She should sleep too, should crawl back into bed and let the warmth pull her under. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw bodies, heard gunfire, watched Cassian disappear into the night over and over again until the loop became unbearable. So she stood at the window and counted her breaths and tried to figure out when exactly she'd stopped being the kind of person who called the police and started being the kind who watched her husband load weapons without flinching. Husband. The word still felt strange. They'd signed papers 4 weeks ago, but the actual wedding had been scheduled for next month. Something small, private. Just them and Eli and maybe Rosa, because the woman had become more family than staff. But after last night, after Victor and the coordinated strikes and coming so close to losing everything, Selene wondered if they should just skip the ceremony entirely. What was the point of celebrating a union built on violence? "You're thinking too loud." Cassian's voice made her turn. He was awake now, propped on one elbow, watching her with those ice-blue eyes that looked more gray in the early light, exhausted, human, vulnerable in ways he never let himself be around anyone else. "Can't sleep," she said. "Come back to bed." "Can't do that either." Cassian sat up fully. The blanket fell away and Selene saw the bruises blooming across his ribs, purple and yellow and angry. He'd said the blood wasn't his, but bruises didn't lie. Someone had gotten close enough to hurt him, close enough to kill him if they'd been a little faster or a little luckier. "You're hurt," she said. "I'm fine." "That's not fine. That's—" Her voice cracked. "You said it would be surgical, clean. You said—" "I said it would be over, and it is." "At what cost?" Cassian swung his legs out of bed, moved to her slowly like approaching something wild that might bolt. "Victor's dead. His allies scattered. The threat is eliminated. That was the cost." "I'm not talking about Victor. I'm talking about you, about us, about—" Selene gestured helplessly at nothing and everything. "About what we're becoming. We're becoming a family. We're becoming criminals. I was already a criminal. You knew that when you called me. I didn't know—" She stopped, started again. "I didn't know what it would mean, what it would cost. I thought—" A bitter laugh escaped. "I thought I could keep my hands clean, let you handle the dirty work and pretend I wasn't part of it. You're not part of it." "Yes, I am. I stayed. I chose this. I let you kill Victor knowing what that meant. That makes me complicit. That makes me... The word stuck in her throat. That makes me as bad as you. Cassian went very still. As bad as me. I didn't mean, yes, you did. His voice stayed level, but something underneath it had gone cold. You meant exactly that. I'm the monster. You're the innocent caught in the monster's web. Except you're not innocent anymore, and that's what's really bothering you. Don't what? Don't tell you the truth? You want to know what the truth is? He stepped closer. The truth is you've been looking for a reason to leave since the second I came back last night. You've been standing at that window for 3 hours trying to figure out how to take Eli and run without admitting that's what you're doing. That's not... It is. You're terrified that loving me makes you something you can't forgive. So you're looking for an exit before you have to face what you've become. The accuracy of it hit like a fist. Selene's hands clenched at her sides. Maybe I am. Maybe I should. You said I could leave any time. I also said you're mine. That hasn't changed. You can't own people. I don't want to own you. I want to keep you. There's a difference. Is there? Selene's voice rose. Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly the same. You make decisions without consulting me. You disappear into the night to commit murder. You come back covered in blood and expect me to just accept it because you say it's for our protection. It is for your protection. I didn't ask you to kill for me. Yes, you did. Cassian's control finally cracked. You called me that first night. You accepted my help. You moved into this house. You let me adopt Eli. Every single choice you made was asking me to be exactly what I am. And now that you've seen what that actually looks like, you want to pretend you didn't know. That you're some innocent victim instead of a grown woman who made calculated decisions about what she was willing to accept. I didn't know it would be like this. What? Bullshit. You knew exactly what I was. You just thought you could love me without getting blood on your hands. He laughed, sharp and bitter. Welcome to reality, Selene. Love is messy. Protection costs. And there's no such thing as staying clean when you're standing next to someone who lives in the dirt. Then maybe I shouldn't be standing next to you. The words hung in the air like smoke. Cassian's face went carefully blank. That mask he wore in public sliding back into place. Is that what you want? I don't know what I want anymore? Yes, you do. You're just too scared to admit it. Don't tell me what You want safety without sacrifice, love without cost, a family without the violence that keeps that family alive. His voice dropped. But that's not how the world works. Not my world. And you knew that. You just hoped you could have it anyway. Selene felt tears burn her eyes, refused to let them fall. So what now? I stay and pretend I'm okay with this? Stay and watch you kill people and tell myself it's necessary? Or you leave and spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder waiting for the next threat? Waiting for another Riker, another Victor, another man who sees weakness and decides to exploit it. Cassian moved to the window, stood beside her close enough to touch, but not touching. I can't change what I am. Can't promise I'll never kill again. Can't give you the clean, safe life you want. But I can promise that with me, you and Eli will always be protected, always be safe, always be home. That's not enough. Then what is? Selene's voice broke. I need to know we're not just surviving, that this life is more than violence and fear and waiting for the next war. What do you want it to be? She stopped, tried to find words for something she couldn't articulate. I want Eli to grow up normal. I want him to have friends and school and birthday parties. I want him to not know what gunfire sounds like. Her throat closed. I want to believe this was worth it. Cassian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice had lost its edge. Do you love me? That's not fair. It's a simple question. Do you love me? Yes. The word came out broken. And I hate that I do. I hate that I love a man who kills without hesitation, who makes me complicit in murder, who's turned my life into something I don't recognize. But you love me anyway. Yes. Then that's what makes it worth it. He finally touched her, hand on her shoulder, gentle. Not the violence, not the protection. The fact that you found someone worth loving and he loves you back enough to burn the world down to keep you safe. That's not romantic, that's terrifying. In my world, they're the same thing. Selene turned to face him fully, looked at the bruises and exhaustion and carefully controlled vulnerability in his expression. This man who'd saved her life and destroyed her peace, who'd given Eli a home and taught him that safety came at the cost of other people's blood, who'd made her complicit in things she'd spent her whole life running from. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered. Cassian's face went blank. Okay? Okay? If you want to leave, leave. I won't stop you." His hand dropped from her shoulder. "I'll set you up somewhere safe. New identities. Protection from a distance. You and Eli can start over." "Just like that?" "No, not just like that. It'll destroy me, but I'd rather be destroyed than keep you somewhere you don't want to be." Selene stared at him, at the resignation in his eyes, the acceptance that she was going to walk away, and there was nothing he could do to stop her without becoming exactly the kind of monster she accused him of being. "I didn't say I wanted to leave," she said quietly. "Then what do you want?" "I want—" She pressed her palms against her eyes, tried to organize thoughts that wouldn't organize. "I want time, space, to figure out if I can live with what we've become." "How much times?" "I don't know. Days, weeks, years? I don't know." The words came out sharp, desperate. "I don't know anything except that I can't keep pretending this is okay, that I can sleep next to you and raise Eli in this house and act like we're a normal family when we're anything but. We're as normal as we're capable of being. That's not good enough." Cassian absorbed that, nodded once. "Okay, take your time. Figure it out. I'll sleep in the guest wing, give you space." "That's not, It's what you asked for." He moved toward the door, paused with his hand on the frame. "But Selene, while you're figuring it out, think about this. You say you hate what you've become, but maybe what you've become is someone strong enough to make hard choices, someone brave enough to love despite the cost, someone who stopped running and started fighting." He looked back at her. "Maybe that's not something to hate. Maybe that's something to be proud of." Then he was gone. Selene stood alone in the bedroom that had started to feel like hers and tried to figure out if he was right. The next 3 days passed in careful distance. Cassian kept his word, slept in the guest wing, showed up for meals but didn't push for conversation, interacted with Eli like nothing had changed while giving Selene the space she'd asked for. It should have helped. Instead, it made everything worse, because the space showed her exactly what life without Cassian looked like. Eli withdrawing back into silence, the house feeling too big and too empty, the constant low-level anxiety of wondering who was watching the perimeter, who was checking for threats, who was making sure they stayed safe now that Cassian had stepped back. On the 4th day, Detective Chen called. Selene answered, expecting questions about Victor, about the coordinated strikes, about how convenient it was that Cassian's rivals had all disappeared in a single night. Instead, "We closed the investigation into Riker Dane's death. Self-defense. You're cleared." Selene's breath caught. "Just like that?" "Just like that. The evidence supports your version of events. Moreau is protecting you from an imminent threat. He's cleared too." "I don't understand. You said—" "I said a lot of things. Some of them were true, some were me trying to see if you'd flip on him." Detective Chen's voice softened. "You didn't, which tells me either you're deep under his control or you genuinely believe he's worth protecting." "I don't know which one it is." "Figure it out, because men like Cassian Moreau don't get many chances at redemption. If you're his, if you and that boy are what's keeping him human, then maybe you staying is better for everyone than you leaving." "You're telling me to stay with a criminal?" "I'm telling you to think about what happens if you don't. How many more bodies pile up because he's got nothing left to lose?" A pause. Sometimes the lesser evil is still better than no restraint at all. The line went dead. Selene sat with those words for a long time, turning them over, examining them from every angle, trying to figure out if Detective Chen was right or if this was just rationalization dressed up as wisdom. That night at dinner, Eli broke his silence, not with words, with a drawing. He slid it across the table to Selene while Cassian was in the kitchen getting more water. The image was simple, a woman standing at a crossroads, One path led to a bright city full of people and color. The other led to a dark forest with a single light in the distance. Under the bright city, Eli had written, "Alone." Under the dark forest, "Home." Selene stared at the drawing until her vision blurred. When Cassian returned, Eli was watching her with those serious dark eyes that had seen too much. "You drew this for me?" Selene asked quietly. Eli nodded. "Which path do you want me to take?" Eli pointed at the dark forest without hesitation. "Even though it's scary? Even though the light is small?" Another nod. Then Eli grabbed his pencil and wrote underneath the forest path, "We're the light." Something in Selene's chest cracked. Cassian had gone very still across the table. He'd seen the drawing, understood what it meant, was waiting to see what Selene would choose. "I need to show you something," Selene said. Cassian frowned. "What?" "Not here. Outside." They left Eli with Rosa and walked into the gardens. Winter had stripped the trees bare, but someone, probably Rosa, had strung lights through the branches anyway. They glittered in the dusk like captured stars. Selene led Cassian to the fountain. The same fountain where Riker had left Eli's backpack as a threat. The same place that had marked the beginning of the end. "I used to think safety meant the absence of danger," Selene said. "That if I could just run far enough, hide well enough, be careful enough, I could keep Eli safe without anyone getting hurt. That's not how the world works." "I know. I know that now. Took me 30 years and almost dying twice to figure it out, but I know." She turned to face him. "But here's what I also know. When Riker had his hands around my throat in that alley, you didn't hesitate. You didn't calculate cost or risk. You just stepped in. And every day since you've done the same thing, protected us without asking for anything in return. I asked you to stay. No. You asked me to build a life with you. That's different." Selene stepped closer. "And I think maybe that's what I've been most afraid of. Not the violence, not the danger, but the fact that for the first time in my life, someone is asking me to stop running, to put down roots, to believe that home is a choice instead of a place you lose." Cassian's throat worked. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I choose you. I choose this. I choose the dark forest with the small light because that light is us. All three of us. Together. Even knowing what it costs? Especially knowing what it costs. Because the alternative, running forever, never settling, teaching Eli that the world is nothing but threats, that costs more." She took his hands. "I can't promise I won't get scared. Can't promise I won't question this. But I can promise I'm done running." "You're sure?" "No. But I'm choosing it anyway." Cassian pulled her close, pressed his forehead against hers. "I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you don't regret it." "You can't promise that. Watch me." They stood there in the garden under the string lights while the temperature dropped and frost formed on bare branches, holding each other like lifelines, like promises, like people who'd chosen each other despite every reason not to. When they finally went inside, Eli was waiting at the door. He looked between them, reading body language the way traumatized kids learn to do. Then his face split into the brightest smile Selene had seen since his parents died. He threw his arms around both of them, and for the first time, Selene let herself believe they might actually be okay. The wedding happened on a Thursday in February. No guests, no ceremony, just Selene and Cassian and Eli standing in the estate's library, while a judge who owed Cassian a favor made it official. Selene wore a simple white dress that Rosa had picked out. Cassian wore a suit that probably cost more than her first car. Eli wore his school uniform and held the rings in a small velvet box. The vows were traditional, safe, nothing that required them to make promises they couldn't keep. But when the judge said, "You may kiss the bride," Cassian cupped Selene's face like she was something precious, and kissed her like he meant to keep her forever. Eli applauded, the judge smiled, Rosa cried, and Selene finally let herself feel married instead of trapped. The reception was dinner in the main dining room. Rosa had outdone herself, courses that seemed endless, wine that was probably older than Selene, desserts that made Eli's eyes go wide. They ate and laughed, and pretended for one night that they were a normal family celebrating a normal wedding. Halfway through dessert, Eli tugged on Cassian's sleeve. "What's up?" Cassian asked. Eli pointed at Selene, then at Cassian, then at himself. made a circle with his finger encompassing all three of them. Family? Cassian guessed. Eli nodded vigorously, then wrote on his ever-present notepad, "Can I call you Dad?" Cassian's face did something complicated. He looked at Selene for permission. "He's asking you, not me," she said quietly. Cassian turned back to Eli. "You want to call me Dad?" Eli nodded. "Even knowing—" Cassian stopped. Tried again. "Even knowing what I am? What I do?" Eli wrote, "You protect us. You love us. That's what dads do." Cassian broke. He pulled Eli into his lap and held him while his shoulders shook, and tears he probably hadn't cried in 20 years finally fell. Eli wrapped his thin arms around Cassian's neck and held on just as tight. Selene watched them and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not the fragile kind that broke at the first sign of trouble. The sturdy kind. The kind built on foundation instead of wishes. The kind that said, maybe, just maybe, they could make this work. Spring came slowly to New York. The estate transformed as winter released its grip. Gardens that had been bare skeletons bloomed into riots of color. The fountain ran again. Birds returned to nest in the old trees. The whole property felt like it was waking up from a long sleep. Selene started a foundation. It happened gradually, first just an idea. What if she could help other women in situations like hers? Women running from dangerous men with kids depending on them and nowhere safe to go? She mentioned it to Cassian over breakfast, expected him to dismiss it, to say it was too dangerous or too complicated or too likely to draw attention. Instead, he said, "How much do you need?" By summer, the Moreau Foundation for At-Risk Families was officially registered. By fall, they'd placed 12 families in safe housing with legal support and job training. By winter, that number had tripled. Selene threw herself into the work, interviewed applicants, coordinated with shelters, built a network of lawyers and therapists and advocates who understood that sometimes the system failed and private intervention was the only option. She didn't ask where the money came from, didn't ask what strings Cassian pulled to make landlords cooperate, or judges rule favorably, or employers overlook gaps in employment history. She just took the resources he provided and used them to save people who'd otherwise slip through cracks the size of canyons. And somewhere in that first year, she stopped feeling guilty about the blood money funding legitimate good. Eli bloomed. He started speaking more. Still not a lot. Still preferred drawing to talking. But the words came easier now, less forced, more natural. He made friends at school, had his first sleepover, joined the art club, started submitting drawings to competitions and winning. On his 10th birthday, he stood in front of his cake, chocolate with vanilla frosting, his request, and made a wish before blowing out the candles. Later, Selene asked what he'd wished for. Eli wrote, "That this never ends." "This?" Selene asked. He gestured around. At the house. At Cassian reading the paper. At the life they'd built from violence and desperation and stubborn refusal to let trauma win. "It won't end," Selene promised. "Not if I have anything to say about it." Eli smiled and went back to his cake. That night, Selene found Cassian in his office. He was working, always working, running an empire that looked more legitimate every year but still had roots deep in the dark. "He wished for this to never end," Selene said from the doorway. Cassian looked up. "Smart kid. He loves you. I love him too." "I know." Selene moved into the room, sat on the edge of his desk. "Do you ever regret it, this life? Having us here making everything complicated?" "Not once. Not even when I almost left?" "Especially not then, because you staying was a choice. Not convenience, not desperation, actual choice." He set down his pen. "That's worth more than anything." "Even your empire?" "Even my empire." He pulled her onto his lap. "You and Eli are the only things I've ever had that I didn't take by force. The only things I built instead of conquered. That makes you irreplaceable." "That's weirdly romantic for a crime lord." "I contain multitudes." Selene laughed and kissed him. Still strange sometimes. Still carried the weight of everything they'd survived. But real. Solid. The kind of love that had survived blood and violence and doubt and come out stronger on the other side. "I'm pregnant," she said. Cassian went very still. "What?" "I'm pregnant. About 8 weeks. I found out yesterday, but I wanted... She stopped, started again. I wanted to make sure you wanted this before I told you. Of course I want this. His hands moved to her stomach, protective, possessive. How are you feeling? Terrified. Of what? Of bringing a baby into this world, this life, of watching them grow up surrounded by danger and having to explain why Daddy has guards and why people are afraid of us and why... Her voice broke. Why their mother chose to stay with a dangerous man instead of running. You'll explain that they're loved, that they're protected, that every choice we made was to give them the best life we could provide. Cassian's hand pressed flat against her stomach. And when they're old enough to understand the whole truth, we'll tell them. And they'll decide for themselves if it was worth it. What if they decide it wasn't? Then we'll deal with it, together, the way we've dealt with everything else. Selene leaned into him, let his warmth and certainty seep into her bones. I'm still scared. Good. Fear keeps you sharp, keeps you careful. He kissed her temple. But don't let it keep you from being happy. Is that what we are? Happy? Look around. We have Eli, we have each other, we have a home and safety and a future that doesn't involve running or hiding or constantly looking over our shoulders. Cassian tilted her chin up. Yes, I'd say we're happy. Selene looked into those ice blue eyes that had terrified her once and now just made her feel seen, understood. Loved in ways that were complicated and messy and sometimes violent, but always, always real. Yeah, she whispered. I think we are. The baby came in December. A girl, loud, healthy, with Cassian's eyes and Selene's stubborn chin and lungs that could wake the dead. They named her Serafina. Eli was obsessed. Spent hours watching her sleep. Drew endless portraits. Appointed himself her protector with the kind of fierce dedication that made Selene's heart ache. Cassian transformed. The man who'd killed without hesitation turned into something soft when he held his daughter. He'd pace the halls at 3 a.m., rocking her while Selene slept. Would cancel meetings if Serafina needed him. Built an entire nursery from scratch because he didn't trust anyone else to make it perfect. You're a terrible crime lord, Selene said one night, watching him change diapers with single-minded focus. Best damn diaper changer in New York, though. That's not something to brag about in your line of work. Sure it is. Shows I can handle any shit that comes my way. Selene threw a burp cloth at him. He caught it, grinned, looked younger than she'd ever seen him. This was the man underneath the monster, the one who'd been buried under violence and survival and the weight of ruling through fear. The one who needed someone to love enough that being soft became worth the vulnerability. She'd given him that. She and Eli, and now Serafina. And in return, he'd given them safety. Home. A life that was strange and complicated and sometimes terrifying, but ultimately theirs. 2 years later, Detective Chen called again. Thought you'd want to know, she said without preamble. We arrested the last of Victor Krause's organization. They're all going away for a long time. Why are you telling me this? Because you were right. About Cassian. About what he's become. Chen paused. Crime in his territory has dropped 40%. Human trafficking is almost non-existent. He's pushed out the cartels and replaced them with, well, not legitimate businesses exactly, but close enough. He's still a criminal. Yeah, but he's a criminal who's making the city safer, who's protecting people the system doesn't protect, who's... Chen sighed. Who's proof that sometimes the good guys wear black hats? Is there a point to this call? The point is I was wrong about you, about him, about whether Eustaine was good or bad. You made him better. And that made a lot of other people safer, so... Chen's voice softened. Thank you for staying, for choosing the harder path. I didn't choose it for the city. I chose it for my family. Doesn't matter why you chose it. Matters that you did. The call ended. Selene stood with the phone in her hand and thought about all the ways her life had diverged from what she'd planned. How she'd gone from running scared to standing her ground. From victim to partner. From someone who needed saving to someone who saved others. She thought about Riker in the alley and the moment Cassian had stepped out of the dark. Thought about the choice she'd made to call him. To accept his help. To stay even when leaving seemed easier. Thought about every moment since. The fear and doubt and violence and blood and slowly growing certainty that this was where she belonged. You okay? Cassian appeared in the doorway holding Serafina. 2 years old now, dark curls and ice blue eyes and personality too big for her small body. Mama! Serafina reached for her. Selene took her daughter, felt that solid weight, that absolute trust, that uncomplicated love that didn't care about complicated histories or moral gray areas. Detective Chen called, Selene said. What did she want? To say thank you for making the city safer. Cassian raised an eyebrow. From her, that's practically a love letter. She also said I made you better. You did. I didn't think that was possible, making a monster better. I'm not a monster. Cassian moved closer, wrapped his arms around both of them. Not anymore. Just a man who found something worth being better for. Serafina giggled and grabbed Cassian's face with sticky toddler hands. He made a face at her. She laughed harder. Eli appeared in the doorway with his latest drawing. 13 now, taller, voice deeper, but still the same serious eyes that saw too much. Family portrait, he announced. First time he'd used his voice instead of writing. He'd been doing that more lately, growing into confidence the way kids did when they finally felt safe enough to be loud. The drawing showed all four of them, Selene and Cassian in the center, Eli on one side, Serafina on the other, the house behind them, gardens spreading out in every direction. And above it all, a sun so bright it almost hurt to look at. It's beautiful, Selene said. It's us, Eli corrected, the way I see us. How's that? Complete. Selene looked at the portrait, at her family rendered in charcoal and hope, at the life they'd built from rubble and determination and refusing to let darkness win. She thought about that night in the alley when death felt inevitable. Thought about Cassian's business card, the deal she'd made, the choice to stay even when every instinct screamed to run. Thought about all the ways that choice had changed her, hardened her, made her complicit in things she'd once found unforgivable. And she thought about Eli's smile, about Serafina's laugh, about Cassian's arms around her at night and waking up safe and loved and home. Worth it. All of it. Every impossible choice. Every moral compromise. Every moment of fear and doubt and wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake. Worth it for this. For them. For the family she'd found in the darkness when the light had abandoned her. Yeah, Selene whispered, looking at Eli's drawing. We're complete. Cassian kissed the top of her head. Eli hugged her waist. Serafina babbled happily about something only she understood. And Selene finally let herself believe in happy endings. Not the kind from fairy tales where everything was perfect and simple and clean, the real kind. The complicated kind. The kind built on blood and sacrifice and choosing each other over and over despite everything trying to tear them apart. The kind that said even monsters could be redeemed if they found the right reason. And sometimes, just sometimes, the best thing you could do for the people you loved was stay. When running seemed safer. Stand when falling seemed easier. Fight when surrender seemed inevitable. Because home wasn't a place, it was a choice. And Selene had made hers. Years continued to pass in the way years do when you're no longer running from them. Seasons cycled. Eli graduated high school with honors and acceptance letters to art schools across the country. Serafina started kindergarten and came home every day with stories about her friends and teachers and why crayons tasted better than they looked. The foundation grew, expanded beyond New York, helped hundreds of families find safety when the system failed them. Selene gave speeches at conferences, wrote articles about domestic violence and institutional failure, became known as someone who'd survived and turned that survival into purpose. She never talked about Cassian in those speeches, never mentioned how the foundation was funded or why powerful men suddenly became very cooperative when she needed something. Some truths were better left in shadow. Cassian's empire evolved. More legitimate businesses, fewer operations that required violence. He wasn't clean, would never be clean, but he was cleaner, and the city was better for it. Safer, more stable, less controlled by men who saw human lives as inventory. On their 5th anniversary, they renewed their vows. Real ceremony this time. Still small. Just family and the few people who'd become family. Marcus and Rosa. A handful of Cassian's most trusted associates. Detective Chen, who showed up in civilian clothes and hugged Selene like an old friend. Eli walked Selene down the aisle, Serafina was flower girl and took her job so seriously she counted every single petal as she dropped it. The vows were different this time. Not traditional, not safe, real. I promise to choose you, Selene said, even when it's hard, even when it's complicated, even when the world says I shouldn't. I promise to be worth choosing, Cassian replied, every single day, for the rest of our lives. They exchanged new rings, kissed to applause, danced to music that echoed through gardens that had gone from place of threats to place of celebration. And when night fell and guests filtered away, and it was just the four of them sitting on the back terrace under string lights and stars, Selene looked at her family and realized something profound. She'd spent 30 years of her life running from danger, spent 3 years after her sister's death convinced that survival meant solitude, spent 4 weeks in this house thinking safety and love were incompatible, and she'd been wrong about all of it. Because real safety wasn't the absence of danger, it was having people who'd fight beside you when danger came. Real love wasn't soft and gentle and easy. It was choosing someone despite their flaws, despite their past, despite every reason the world gave you to walk away. And real family wasn't blood or genetics or matching last names. It was the people who showed up, who stayed, who fought for you and with you and sometimes against you, but always, always for your survival. What are you thinking about? Cassian asked quietly. Selene looked at him. At 15 years of gray in his hair and laugh lines around his eyes, and the softness that fatherhood had carved into his face. That I'd do it all again, she said. All of it? Every moment, every choice, every terrifying second. She took his hand. Because all of it led here. To this. To us. No regrets? Not about staying, not about you, not about any of it. Cassian pulled her close. I love you. I know. I'm serious. I don't say it enough, but His voice caught. You saved my life. Not in the alley, not from Riker or Victor or any of them. You saved me from myself, from what I was becoming before you showed up and reminded me there was more to life than power and control and fear. You saved me first. We saved each other. Yeah, Selene whispered. We did. Eli and Serafina had fallen asleep on the outdoor couch, tangled together the way siblings did, safe, loved, protected by people who'd burned the world down before letting anything happen to them. Cassian carried Serafina inside. Eli was old enough to wake and walk himself. They tucked both kids into bed, stood in the doorway watching them sleep the way parents did when overwhelmed by how much they had to lose. Thank you, Cassian said quietly. For what? For calling me that night. For staying. For giving me this. He gestured at the sleeping children, at the house, at the life they'd built. For making me more than what I was. You made yourself more. I just gave you a reason. Best reason I ever had. They went to their own room, climbed into bed that had stopped feeling like his or hers years ago and become theirs. Cassian pulled Selene against his chest. She fit there perfectly now, like her body had learned the shape of his and adjusted accordingly. I'm happy, she said into the darkness. Good. I didn't think I'd ever be happy again after Sarah died. Thought that part of me died with her. It didn't die. Just went dormant, waiting for the right moment to wake up. You're that moment. We're that moment, all of us, together. Selene closed her eyes, let exhaustion and contentment pull her toward sleep. But before she went under completely, one last thought surfaced. She'd started this journey in an alley with hands around her throat thinking she was going to die. And she'd ended it here, warm and safe and loved beyond measure, with a family she'd built from impossible choices and stubborn hope, with a man who'd been violence personified and become something softer without losing his edge, with children who'd been broken and healed and taught that home was worth fighting for. Some people would say she'd made a deal with the devil. They'd be right. But what they'd miss was that sometimes the devil was exactly what you needed to survive hell. And sometimes, just sometimes, loving the monster was what made him stop being one. Rain hammered the windows. Same kind of rain from that night 5 years ago. Same city, same darkness. But everything else had changed. Selene was no longer the woman dying in an alley. She was the woman who'd chosen to live, to fight, to love despite the cost. And that made all the difference. She fell asleep in Cassian's arms while rain washed the city clean, and morning promised another day of the strange, complicated, beautiful life they'd built together. The kind of life worth staying for, the kind worth fighting for, the kind that proved even the darkest nights could end in dawn if you just held on long enough. And Selene had held on. Through blood and violence and impossible choices, through fear and doubt and moments when running seemed easier than standing, through all of it. And she'd made it here. Home. Finally, irrevocably home.